Chapter 489. After the semi-finals of the variety show 7 years ago, Guan Na knocked on Su Nianhua's door in transparent pajamas the night she got the resurrection card. Instead, she was scolded by Su Nianhua and cleared the level. Therefore, even if she was deliberately eliminated by Su Nianhua in the competition with a low score, she didn't dare to say anything in the end. In this way, she lived in peace for a while. Unexpectedly, not long after that, she changed careers to become a host. With good luck and a unique style, she quickly became the #1 sister in the television station. Now, she had someone backing her up, but Su Nianhua was declining day by day. He couldn't be compared to back then. Guan Na probably thought that she would finally have a chance to step on him after he had fallen from grace. The intermission was very short, and soon after, the second half of the show would start recording. Probably because there was some conflict between the two hosts during the break, Guan Na and Zhou Xiaoyu's expressions were obviously not very good. With Zhou Xiaoyu around, Guan Na's aggressive momentum finally restrained a little. Fortunately, the second half was basically a game segment, and there was no interview content. At the beginning, it was a big test of tacit understanding. Before the recording, Gu Qi told Yi Huanyan that he had already arranged with the program. This time, the set of the crew was set to be a harmonious one. After all, the news of Guan Na and Shang Anren not getting along was spreading everywhere. Even things like slapping in the crew had been reported. At the scene of the show, the 5 people were asked the same 10 questions, and in the end, it was based on their understanding of each other. The favorite songs to listen to when they were students, the type of movies they liked, and so on were all simple questions. When the 4 people finished answering the answer board, Yi Huanyan and Su Nianhua's answers were highly consistent. After the audience was in an uproar, Yi Huanyan and Su Nianhua tacitly exchanged a look. They were good friends, and to be good friends, they must have the same interests and hobbies. When they first listened to underground rock with him, they listened to some very unpopular songs, but they were all each other's favorites. Heavens, this is too miraculous. Guan Na stared at Yi Huanyan teasingly. This is the first time in all my years of playing this game that I've seen such a perfect match. Su Nianhua is ACDCBABCDD, and screenwriter Gu is ACDCAABCDD. There's only a difference of one question. What's the relationship between the two of you? Although the question was asked in a half-joking tone, Yi Huanyan was still vigilant. It was not the behavior of a professional host to say such things in this kind of situation. She was obviously deliberately stirring up trouble, leading the audience to think differently about her relationship with Su Nianhua. Yi Huanyan picked up the microphone and explained with a smile, "I have a good relationship with Su Nianhua's wife, Tai Ping Shi, so I often hang out with her. That's why I share some of their interests and hobbies." The topic should have been changed just like that, but Guan Na said meaningfully, "Guarding against fire, stealing, and guarding against best friends." Yi Huanyan narrowed her eyes and gave her a warning look. Guan Na frowned and avoided her gaze. The recording of the show ended late at night, and the group walked backstage. Chen Ning yawned and stretched. "I really can't stand it anymore. I thought that eating and drinking would be enough. He even insisted that I perform a set of fist techniques. I just started to warm up, and now he wants me to stop. It's really annoying." Su Nianhua walked beside Yi Huanyan. The entertainment industry is like this. Words can be exchanged with swords. It's a good thing you're not part of this industry. If you don't like it, don't participate in this kind of show in the future. "It's okay, I'm going to the bathroom." Yi Huanyan smiled reluctantly. Although she was uncomfortable in her heart, she knew that it would be over soon. A strong dragon could not suppress a local snake. Guan Na had a great relationship with the TV station. As soon as she walked to the door of the bathroom, she heard a loud slap coming from inside. Yi Huanyan's footsteps paused slightly and stopped at the door. She didn't go in. From the half-open door, she could vaguely see a wine-red corner of clothes, which was Shang Anren's clothes today. "You dare to hit me?" Guan Na's tone was full of disbelief. "Guan Na, right? I don't know which temple you are from. You are so capable that you dare to provoke guests in the recorded program. I haven't been in the entertainment industry for half a year, but I underestimated the present host. Shang Anren's voice was very cold. This slap is to remind you not to provoke people who shouldn't be provoked. Believe it or not, the words you intentionally or unintentionally guided in the program will not be played on TV next week. There was a few seconds of silence in the bathroom. Yi Huanyan could almost feel Guan Na gnashing her teeth. I clearly heard that you, Su Nianhua and Guan Na have always been at odds with each other. Why are you helping them? I'm not helping them. I just think that your current face makes me think of some things. It makes me feel disgusted. Not everyone is lucky enough to rely on a big tree for the rest of their lives, Guan Na. You take care of yourself. Get out. Then a cold wind passed through. Guan Na ran out of the bathroom in embarrassment, covering her face. She ran so fast that she didn't even see Huanyan standing in the shadow, probably because she was afraid of being discovered. There was a sound of running water in the bathroom. Shang Anren washed her hands. Her palms were red and painful. That slap was not light. When she looked up, she saw half a figure in the mirror standing behind her, looking at her thoughtfully. When did you come? Shang Anren asked in surprise. Just when you did it. Oh, you saw it all. Her attitude was neither salty nor light. She took a tissue, wiped her hands slowly, and then rolled the tissue into a ball and threw it into the trash can. Thank you. Yi Huanyan looked at her, and his voice was very clear. Shang Anren was slightly stunned, showing a somewhat unnatural look, and turned her head with a self-deprecating smile. What's there to thank me for? Thank me for avenging you and Su Nianhua? You think too much. I just saw Guan Na like that and thought of myself a few years ago. Looking at it now, I really think there was something wrong with my brain back then. You thought that slap was on her face, but in fact, I just wanted to slap my own face but couldn't do it, so I vented my anger. Still, thank you. The show is over. I'll go back first. Xiao Mu is waiting for me at the door. Shang Anren clenched her fingers and walked out of the bathroom without looking back. Actually, you don't have to bear too much psychological burden. The past is the past. Yi Huanyan looked at her back. His voice was not loud, but after hearing her reply, his originally depressed mood seemed to have dissipated at this moment, and he felt refreshed. Everyone had two sides. There was probably no one in this world who was completely bad. It was just that because of persistence, some evil thoughts in the depths of human nature could not be suppressed. Perhaps because of these evil thoughts, they did wrong things, but in life, even if others were unwilling to forgive you, you should treat yourself well and learn to forgive yourself. Chapter 490. It was midnight when they came out of the TV station. There were still some support banners and photos left by fans of the guests outside. They were collected by the cleaners and thrown into the trash can. Chen Yin stood behind Yi Huanyan. She shrank her neck and climbed into the car quickly. She looked out of the window and sighed, "Look, the fan support is not environmentally friendly. If I become popular in the future, I will definitely not let my fans do that." You just finished a variety show and you feel that you are going to be popular? Yi Huanyan looked back at her. It is not impossible. It is said that some people are born to be variety show stars. Maybe I can be a host in the future. Like Guan Na? Who is she? She speaks in a strange way and is full of bad ideas. If I want to do a variety show, I will do the kind of show that makes the guests feel comfortable and the audience also feel comfortable. Well, don't brag. Saturday is the Fengshang charity banquet. Try on the dress in advance. You and Su Nianhua will attend it together. I will walk the red carpet with Brother Hua. Chen Yin looked at Yi Huanyan in surprise. What about you? You and Ling Zhan, right? Yi Huanyan didn't say yes or no. She turned her head to look out of the window and gave an irrelevant answer. It seems that it is going to snow again. She remembered that the last time she attended the Fengshang charity banquet was 6 years ago. 6 years ago, the chief editor of Fengshang was still Su Mang. At that banquet, Ling Han spent a lot of money to buy a portrait that should have been broken. It was the one that was painted on the napkin. When they got home in the early morning, Yi Huanyan and Chen Yin walked quietly in the yard. The snow on the road in the yard was cleaned by Uncle Zhang. But it had just snowed, so there was a thin layer of snow. It was very soft when they walked on it. When they entered the yard, the light in Ling Han's room was still on. Chen Yin yawned and went back to the room. Yi Huanyan stared at the light in Ling Han's room for a while. There was some warmth in her eyes. When she went back to the room, the light in the opposite room went out. The next afternoon, the results of the paternity test were delivered to Haiyan Media. Yi Huanyan threw the folder to Gu Qi without even looking at it. Together with the address on the back of the old lady's handwritten letter, she asked him to find the lawyer who notarized the old lady's belongings. I remember that the lawyer I asked you to investigate was surnamed Li. He worked for the law firm 6 years ago. I'm now a partner in the law firm. Gu Qi took over the conversation and pulled out a black card with the logo of the law firm on it. Lawyer Li Chunjing. I've already made an appointment. He'll be here after work this afternoon. Yi Huanyan took the business card and looked at it. Her thoughts drifted far away. Before the old lady's operation, her biggest wish was to see her and Ling Han get married. They had hurriedly gotten the marriage certificate and knelt in front of the old lady's bed. The old lady had asked her to sign the inheritance agreement. The specific amount of property was not stated in the notary certificate. Yi Huanyan guessed that it should be a large amount, but at that time, she did not have any expectations of how much property the child in her belly could inherit. She only thought that she could give birth to the child, that her grandmother's operation could be successful, and that she could live a good life with Ling Han in the future. Mr. Gu. Gu Qi's voice pulled her back from her thoughts. Yes? Have you made a decision about the charity banquet? Yi Huanyan's expression froze. She smiled and said, I'll go there alone. Okay. Gu Qi did not say much. He then reported the work to be done before the movie screening and the lucky draw on the day of the screening. The screening will be held in Jinling next week. The weather forecast says that it will snow heavily over there. I'm afraid that all the flights will be cancelled. We will have to drive there. Yi Huanyan pondered for a few seconds and said, The snowy weather will affect the attendance of the cinema. If the weather is really bad, we can consider postponing the screening. Gu Qi nodded. I've talked to the cinema. The publicity department is also ready to adjust the time. It was a waste of God's gift for Gu Xinian to transfer Gu Qi to be her assistant. A person like him was probably an elite who could enter the top 500 companies in the world. Yet, he had to squeeze into a small company like hers to be her assistant. Gu Qi, I've really troubled you during this period. You're the one who helped the company get started. When the movie is over, the Gu Corporation should be reorganized. When the time comes, I'll ask my brother to transfer you back. Gu Qi was slightly stunned. Why? What am I not doing well enough? No, I just feel that it's a bit of a waste for you to work with me. If you're willing, I'll tell my brother to let you work by his side like Gu Lu. Or if you're willing to stay at the headquarters of the Gu Corporation, he'll definitely agree. Yi Huanyan continued to talk and did not notice that Gu Qi's expression was getting uglier. President Gu, if I don't want to stay here, no one can stop me. I'm the one who wants to stay here. You. Everyone has their own ideas and pursuits. I'm willing to stay here. Yi Huanyan stared at him for a few seconds and suddenly exhaled. She leaned back in her chair and shrugged. Spreading her hands, she looked nonchalant. All right, Gu Qi, I don't want to criticize you. No matter what, you're still a graduate from a prestigious university. Aren't you a little too narrow-minded in your pursuits? You're just staying here with a small company like mine that you don't even know if it has any development. You don't even know when you'll be able to make it big. If you want to stay here, then stay here. Gu Qi's face was stiff. He was still expressionless. To Yi Huanyan, this look was somewhat similar to Ling Han from a few years ago. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. When Lawyer Li arrives, I'll inform you again. Okay. Gu Qi closed the office door and stood in the corridor with a complicated expression. In his eyes, Lan Jiang was not very prosperous. It was much worse than the places where he could have stayed. 3 years ago, when he was transferred from the company headquarters by Gu Sinian and appointed to this place to establish Haiyan Media, he actually did not think that he would stay here for so long. Gu Sinian told him that he would take over after his sister was discharged from the hospital, but he could go back to the headquarters to be the general manager at any time during this period. However, he waited until the company stabilized and did not leave. Year after year, he heard that the woman insisted on having surgery in Florida. He waited year after year. He read her scripts and all the stories she had written. He always felt that the people she wrote about had her shadow. He was more and more certain that he stayed because he wanted to see her, and even to be by her side. "I'm willing to stay here, not to stay in this company, but to stay in you." Chapter 491. At 5:30 in the afternoon, Lawyer Li brought the notarized document to Haiyan Media to hand it over to Yi Huanyan. After checking the paternity test report, Lawyer Li handed a document to Yi Huanyan. Inside is the password to the safe and some property transfer certificates. This was entrusted by old Madam Ling, and now it has been returned to its original owner. Compare the list on the notarization certificate. If there are no problems, as a guardian, you can sign here. Yi Huanyan solemnly took the document. The craft paper bag was very thick, and there were more than 10 pieces of A4 paper inside. They were all records of the old lady's real estate and shops over the years. There were even stock certificates of several large listed companies, and an account opened 10 years ago. Inside were the rents and stock dividends of the shops all over the years. The real estate is valued according to 6 years ago, but the stock dividends and shop rents can't be completely estimated. The money is in the account. You can check it yourself when the time comes. Yi Huanyan nodded. "Thank you, Lawyer Li." Lawyer Li's gaze was very complicated. "You're welcome. This is my job. It's just that Miss Yi has changed too much over the years. If you didn't take the initiative to find me and have so many documents to prove your identity, I'm afraid I wouldn't dare to recognize you." 6 years had indeed changed too much. After sending Lawyer Li away, Yi Huanyan sat behind her desk and frowned as she looked at the documents spread out in front of her. Just those real estate values were already sky high. The old lady was a traditional but bold woman. 6 years ago, when the housing price was still stable, she had invested all the money in her hands. Just those 50 properties were now estimated to be worth hundreds of millions. Now, most of these things were under Naneo's name, and she was taking care of them as his guardian. However, just the part that the old lady left to her was already a considerable amount of assets. These things were undoubtedly rain after a long drought for the pleasure group. She believed that if her grandmother was still alive, she would definitely want this money to be used to make the pleasure group make a comeback. It was Feng Xiang's charity banquet on Saturday night. Feng Xiang had booked the entire Yuehai Hotel this time. There was a long red carpet at the entrance of the hotel, and the whole scene was comparable to the opening ceremony of a film festival. As the host, Ji Xiaoye had been waiting in the venue in advance. Yi Huanyan and others were sitting in the car. From a distance, they saw Su Mang in a long black dress, holding her husband's arm and smiling gracefully on the red carpet. Her temperament was still the same as before. "Why don't you come with us?" Chen Yin's voice came from the other side. Today, she was wearing a black and white bodice jumpsuit. Her short hair was very neat, and her makeup was exquisite. She had a strong general attack style. Su Nianhua was wearing a white suit, and he was not inferior to Chen Yin's fierce aura. Instead, he looked more elegant and handsome. Yi Huanyan smiled. "No need. I can walk on my own." Still waiting. Chen Yin curled her lips. "I don't think Ling Han will come. After all, it is not appropriate for him to walk on crutches in such a big occasion." "Xiaowu," Su Nianhua interrupted Chen Yin's words in time, with a bit of warning in his tone. Chen Yin stuck out her tongue, pulled the door of the car, and said, "Forget what I said." Su Nianhua and Chen Yin walked on the red carpet. Yi Huanyan waited in the car for a while, and then she lifted her skirt and got out of the car. The promotional work for Remaining Life was done very well. Even though Su Nianhua was already a retired singer before this, Due to his lack of negative history, his popularity with the public was very good and he still received a lot of support from netizens. Yi Huanyan lifted the corner of her skirt and waited for Sun Yanhua and Chen Yin to walk in front of the giant screen to sign their signatures before slowly walking on the red carpet. She had only taken 2 steps when the flashes suddenly shone in her eyes. It was very glaring. She raised her head to block it, and a wave of dizziness hit her. She staggered and fell to the ground before she even had time to scream. The expected pain didn't come. A pair of strong hands held her arms firmly. She was happy and looked up. "Are you okay, Sister Yen Yen?" A clear young boy's voice rang in her ears. He was wearing a dark blue suit with a burgundy bow tie. His hair was specially styled with hair gel, and the childishness of a teenager faded away. He looked like a mature and steady man. "Ling Zhan?" Yi Huanyan looked a bit stunned. Ling Zhan smiled and helped her stand steadily. The flashbulbs kept flashing, and the sound of whispers could be heard. "Who is this? He's so handsome. Is he also an actor in the remaining Life crew? I don't think this person was on the official poster before. Could he be screenwriter Gu's boyfriend? How is that possible? Isn't screenwriter Gu's boyfriend the CEO of the Pleasure Group? How long ago was that? Pleasure Group is now out of the picture. Screenwriter Gu broke up with Ling Han a long time ago." These words fell into Yi Huanyan's ears and were particularly harsh. "Let's go." A warmth came from the crook of his arm. Ling Zhan grabbed her arm and let her hold his arm. Then, he walked directly toward the giant screen, pretending that he didn't hear the whispers of the reporters. But the reporters didn't buy it. She had just taken 2 steps when a microphone was placed in front of Yi Huanyan. "President Gu, have you confirmed that you have broken up with the former CEO of the Pleasure Group, Ling Han? Is this person beside you your new boyfriend? Is this gentleman also acting in Remaining Life? Why wasn't he on the official poster before?" "Screenwriter Gu, is this the newcomer promoted by Haiyan Media?" Yi Huanyan's expression changed slightly. She stopped in her tracks and looked at the reporters with a smile. "This is my cousin. He's not a public figure, so if you want to publish a press release, please make sure to censor his face." When the words, "cousin," came out of Yi Huanyan's mouth, Ling Zhan's expression froze. "Does bringing your cousin to the red carpet mean that you have broken up with the former CEO of the Pleasure Group, Ling Han?" "No, he's been a little busy recently. We're fine. Thank you for your concern." "Busy with what? Is it because the Pleasure Group is going to be acquired? Can you explain why he announced that he had transferred his shares to his fiancée? Do you know that he has a fiancée?" This was probably the first time Yi Huanyan had faced so many reporters alone since she had returned to China. Previously, when Ling Han voluntarily gave up all of his shares in the Pleasure Group, it caused a huge uproar in the entertainment and financial industry. Unfortunately, at that time, Ling Han had disappeared and gone to Los Angeles. And now, Yi Huanyan thought that the matter had been settled, but she didn't expect that the reporters would continue to stir up trouble even though it had already been settled. Yi Huanyan showed some displeasure on her face and said coldly, "You seem to be very interested in this reporter. You seem to be quite concerned about financial issues. It's a pity that you're an entertainment reporter. As for a fiancé, he doesn't have one. I'm very clear about that. Then how do you explain the marriage announcement published in the newspaper? Are you getting involved in someone else's relationship?" A sweet voice came from the crowd of reporters. When she heard this voice, Ling Zhan's eyes showed some suspicion. She looked in the direction of the voice and her expression changed when she saw the female reporter. Chapter 492. The female reporter was wearing a pair of black-rimmed glasses and a scarf. She stood in the crowd, and her face was almost invisible. She was holding a microphone in one hand, and her other hand was holding a phone to take photos. Yi Huanyan's eyes showed a trace of anger. She was about to refute when she heard a commotion in the crowd. "It's Ling Han!" someone shouted, and Yi Huanyan's eyes narrowed. She followed the reporter's gaze and looked at the end of the red carpet. In the midst of the snowstorm, A tall man dressed in black walked towards her. The snowflakes fell on his broad shoulders, making his black clothes look more solemn. His slender legs walked on the red carpet, very stable and strong. A trace of warmth came from her palm, and his voice was in her ears, pouring into the cold wind. There was a traffic jam on the road, so I'm late. Sorry. Yi Huanyan showed a look of disbelief. She didn't even remember how the red carpet was finished. She was held by his hand in a very stiff manner, and under the flash, she was led by him in front of the huge screen to sign her name, and then entered the hotel lobby. The heater warmed her hands. Don't you feel cold wearing so little? Ling Han's voice was a little hoarse. His clean and slender hands were holding her hands, and he was blowing on them. It was warm. She lowered her head and stared blankly at Ling Han's legs, which were walking freely, and muttered, Your legs? Ling Han looked down. Wasn't your mother doing acupuncture for me before? It was really effective. Actually, 2 days ago, I could already walk without crutches. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I sent you a message to ask if you were coming to the banquet, but you didn't reply. Yi Huanyan's voice was a little choked. I thought you didn't reply to me meant that you weren't coming. Until the night before, Ling Han hadn't mentioned the charity banquet to her. She couldn't hold it in anymore. The night before going to bed, she sent him a message to ask if he wanted to attend the banquet with her. She didn't get a reply until she fell asleep with her phone in her hand. I didn't tell you because I wanted to give you a surprise. What surprise? The reporters are making things difficult for me, Yi Huanyan grumbled unhappily. These people have nothing better to do. They're just waiting for us to break up every day. Just now, a female reporter even said that I'm a mistress. She's the mistress. Her whole family are mistresses. Ling Han lovingly raised his hand to tidy up the loose hair on her temples. Yi Huanyan's face flushed red. She raised her eyes to look at him, unable to look away. It had been a long time since she had seen pleasure look so radiant. She was happy for him from the bottom of her heart. Let's go in. It's cold outside. Ling Han reached out his hand to her, as if he wanted to hold her hand and walk. Yi Huanyan curled up the corners of her mouth. She smiled very sweetly and nodded heavily. Holding him with one hand and holding the corner of her dress with the other hand, they walked into the banquet hall side by side. The theme of Fengshang every year was charity auction. Most of the things sold were the personal belongings of stars and artists. The funds from the auction were all donated to build Hope Primary School in remote mountainous areas. Originally, after entering the banquet hall, Yi Huanyan planned to find Ji Xiaoye. But as soon as she entered the banquet hall, she saw Su Mang waving to them at the main table near the stage. She raised her eyes to look at Ling Han. Do you want to sit at the same table as Sister Su Mang? Fengshang's charity banquet was said to be casual, and there was no designated seat. But in fact, everyone had a private comparison. The one who sat closer to the stage was naturally the one with the highest prestige and the one with the greatest ability. Su Mang was the former chief editor of Fengshang. Naturally, she sat in the seat closest to the stage. And the people sitting around her were all the top bosses in Lonjiang City. Yi Huanyan asked Ling Han because she was afraid that he would feel uncomfortable. Yes. He responded with a grunt, but did not reveal any unusual expression. As soon as they sat down, Su Mang pulled Yi Huanyan and asked with a smile. You two have been together for so long, but your wedding has always been delayed. I have received the wedding invitation of Xiao Yu and your brother. You two should hurry up. Yi Huanyan's eyes fell behind Su Mang. She said with a smile, You are still talking about me. Have you and Manager Li had a wedding? How old are we? How can we compare with you? Su Mang lowered his head and smiled. The two chatted for a while. They hadn't seen each other for a long time, so they had a lot of topics to talk about. After Su Mang retired from Fengshang, he only came to the charity banquet every year. Usually, he traveled around the world all year round. It was a pleasure to travel around the world with Li Ao. After chatting for a while, Yi Huanyan was a little absent-minded. Ling Han was chatting with other people at the table behind. His voice was not loud, so a few words fell into Yi Huanyan's ears. "If you need any help with pleasure, just let me know. Fortunately, there is no difficulty now." Ling Han's voice was very flat. "Don't treat us as outsiders. After all, we were friends in business at the beginning. Now pleasure being acquired is really out of our expectation. So the business world is like a battlefield. If you make a mistake accidentally, you will be finished. This saying is really true. You also remind us that we can't trust our own family too much." Seeing that Yi Huanyan was absent-minded, Su Mang's eyes deepened a little. He quietly poked Li Ao behind him with his elbow. Li Ao sat up straight calmly, knocked on the edge of the round table, glanced at those bosses on the table who were talking in a sarcastic manner, and said with a fake smile, "The theme of today's banquet is charity. If you really have so much money that you can't spend it all, why don't you contribute more money to the auction later? Just take it as praying for yourself." The one who had just talked at length about Ling Han's mistakes in business suddenly felt a little angry. He smiled embarrassedly and said, That's right. After all, it is a charity banquet. For the sake of Manager Li, I have to do my best to help those children in the mountainous area." "So, Manager Chow, do you mean that you are going to make a splash?" Li Ao looked at the man opposite him meaningfully. Making a splash meant that no matter what the first auction item was, he didn't need to participate in the bidding. No matter who bid for the last auction item, he would complete the transaction for the other party at 10 times the price and give the auction item to the person who bid for it. Manager Chow's face turned pale. "Manager Li, you are kidding. You also know that my company has been busy with mergers and acquisitions recently. My funds have been tied up. How can I? This is BBL's new bright series of jewelry, right? It is the first one in the world. It really deserves its reputation, Mrs. Chow." Su Mang's voice interrupted Manager Chow's excuse. The young woman who was called Mrs. Chow was stunned at first. After she came to her senses, there was some complacency in her eyes. "Yes, it is the wedding anniversary gift that my old Chow bought for me. There is only one set in the world now. Honey, why are you pulling me?" Manager Chow frowned and glanced at Manager Chow beside her, with a puzzled look. Su Mang withdrew his gaze and looked at Yi Huanyan tacitly. "Bright series. This set is worth 100 million yuan. Mrs. Chow is so lucky." Chapter 493. Almost. Mr. Chow said that he spent more than 100 million yuan. I can't remember the small change of several million yuan. Mrs. Chow looked complacent, but she didn't know that her husband beside her was so angry that his face turned livid. Mrs. Chow was Mr. Chow's mistress last year. She was originally a model and had been Mr. Chow's mistress for a few years. Later, his first wife passed away from cancer. She had indeed won Mr. Chow's favor, so she was promoted to Mr. Chow's mistress. However, it was one thing to be deeply in Mr. Chow's heart, but whether he could bring her out to meet people was another matter. In Su Mang's words, this woman was a typical big-breasted but brainless woman. Except for pleasing men in bed, she had no ability at all. She was a hindrance to men when she showed up. Yi Huanyan smiled and said, "The Brilliant series is good, but this set of diamonds is not good for people. In my opinion, the Cold Moon series that just came out at the beginning of this month is better. The price is not as luxurious as that of the Brilliant series, but it is inlaid with high-quality jade, which can regulate the body. It is good for women's skin if they wear it for a long time." "Really?" Mrs. Chow's face tightened, and she showed some resentment in an instant. Seeing that Yi Huanyan's words seemed to be undermining her, it was inevitable for women to compare with each other. And seeing that Yi Huanyan didn't wear any jewelry, she became more dissatisfied and questioned, "Miss, which company are you from? Do you know jewelry?" President Chow coughed in a hurry and scolded, "What company?" "She is the chairman of Haiyan Media, President Gu Huanyan. Don't talk nonsense if you don't know anything." After saying this, President Chow glanced at Yi Huanyan embarrassedly. "President Gu, I'm sorry. My wife is used to staying at home and has never seen you before." Yi Huanyan smiled and didn't show any displeasure. It doesn't matter. My company is small and not presentable. It's normal that Mrs. Chow doesn't know it. Mrs. Chow was still muttering in a low voice. Haiyan Media? I have never heard of it. President Chow glared at her fiercely. Only then did she realize the seriousness of the matter and shut her mouth. The bosses present were giving face to Yi Huanyan, not because of Haiyan Media, but because she was the second daughter of the Gu Corporation and the younger sister of the president, Gu Sinian. Although something had happened to the Gu's financial group some time ago, it did not affect its status at all. Now that they were disturbed by Mrs. Chow, who didn't know how to read people's expressions and didn't know how to speak, everyone at the table didn't look very good. Mrs. Chow may not know much about Haiyan Media, but you should have heard of Yonghen Jewelry, right? Su Mang looked at Mrs. Chow. Of course. Mrs. Chow said matter-of-factly. Isn't BBL the diamond series under Eternal Jewelry? Then you should have heard of the founder of Everlasting Jewelry, Madame Wen Yi, right? The dazzling series of jewelry was made by her personally. She is the only daughter of a famous jewelry master. Who doesn't know her as long as she wears jewelry? Everyone at the table was waiting to see the fun. Everyone reminded Mrs. Chow. Only President Chow's face became darker and darker, but he couldn't find a reason to interrupt Su Mang's words. Su Mang's smile became more and more thought-provoking. Then, Mrs. Chow, you should know Yen Yen. After all, Yen Yen is the only daughter of Madame Wen Yi. Madame Wen Yi's daughter? Mrs. Chow exclaimed, Really? The dazzling series of jewelry around your neck was made by a student of my mother. My mother gave some guidance and helped to cut the 2 diamonds in the middle. Yi Huanyan looked as if she was at ease. So this set of jewelry is actually not made by my mother, but it is very rare. My mother hasn't made jewelry for more than 10 years. Then the cold moon you just said. The cold moon was the concept design made by my mother herself. She chose all the jade by herself. The inlay craftsmanship was made by my mother's favorite student. Because people are old, they always pay more attention to health. But Mrs. Chow's skin is very good. I think you don't need these. No. Mrs. Chow was surprised. No. You said that the cold moon was designed by Madame Wen Yi personally. I didn't want this set, but since it was designed by Madame Wen Yi, I am sure. Cough, cough. President Chow began to cough again. Yi Huanyan lowered her head and stopped smiling. Darling, did you hear that? The cold moon is the set I told you a few days ago. It can take good care of your skin. All the people at the table held back their laughter with a straight face. President Chow's arm was shaken by Mrs. Chow like a large rattledrum. His whole body shook violently together. Bye bye bye. At the moment when he finally heard President Chow say yes, Su Mang glanced at the direction of the stage calmly. A set of the Cold Moon series costs more than 90 million yuan. President Chow spends a lot of money for a woman. No wonder he is so generous. He is willing to make a hit for the children in the mountain area. It is a great honor for our Fengshang's charity dinner. President Chow was in a dilemma. He bought a necklace worth more than 90 million yuan. Of course, he couldn't refuse the charity dinner. Mrs. Chow was still happy. She discussed the effect of jewelry on beauty with Yi Huanyan, but she didn't find that her husband's face had almost fallen to the ground. If he didn't care about his face, he might have left on the spot. I'm going to get some fresh air. President Chow pulled his tie. It seemed that he couldn't sit still. He pulled Mrs. Chow, who didn't know the reason, and left the table. As soon as they disappeared outside the hall, some people at the table couldn't help laughing. Someone joked, Editor Su, is President Chow going to run away at the last minute and make a blank check? Can't you send someone to follow him? I think President Ling is the only one at our table who is free. Why don't President Ling go and see whether President Chow runs away with his wife? Ha ha ha! The people at the table burst into laughter. Ling Han seemed to turn a deaf ear to what they said. There was no expression on his face at all. Su Mang's face darkened. He looked at the person who provoked him first. If President Chow runs away, Won't President Hong, who is the most prestigious person at our table and has the biggest company now, do something for him? I heard that Venture Media recently signed a lot of young and beautiful girls without any effort. They plan to promote them after the spring. President Hong is going to celebrate the new year. Venture Media. Yi Huanyan's eyes narrowed. Her eyes fell on the middle-aged man across the table who had just joked with Ling Han. He was about 40 years old, about the same age as Ling Han. He looked very gentle and kind. There was always a smile on his face. But when she looked at him deeply, she felt that this person was elusive. He was the president of Venture Media, Hong Rizhong. Su Mang was obviously speaking for Ling Han. Thinking of the old relationship between Su Mang and the pleasure group in the past, the people at the table also restrained themselves a little. They didn't dare to talk to Ling Han anymore. Their faces were full of resentment. Hong Rizhong's face didn't change. Chapter 494. Editor Su, you must be joking. Isn't the most capable and prestigious person at our table President Ling? Everyone's faces changed with this sentence. Everyone knows that President Ling single-handedly made the Pleasure Group the first media company in Lonjiang City. He took the lead in establishing the live broadcast platform and cultivated the first generation of Internet stars. Even compared with those media companies in the circle of the capital, he is not inferior. If Editor Su is the godmother of the fashion industry, then President Ling is the well-deserved godfather of the media industry. These words were so reasonable that no one could refute it. But everyone knew Ling Han's current situation. In such a situation, there was only one purpose for him to say these words. He raised his head first and then suppressed it. But until now, he only relies on women. Ling Han. Yi Huanyan stood up and looked at Ling Han's back. Her eyes were full of worries. She was about to catch up with him, but Su Mang grabbed her wrist. Looking back, she saw that Su Mang was hinting her not to go with his eyes. And she glimpsed that Li Ao had already caught up with him. She breathed a sigh of relief and sat down again. As soon as she sat down, Hong Rizhong's voice sounded again. It was not like the sarcasm just now, but with a bit of solicitude. In fact, President Gu is such a rare talent. You can marry any kind of man. I've always admired Mr. Gu's talent. You're able to open your own company and write scripts. Every script you write is very popular. There's a popular saying that goes, you can rely on your looks, but you have to rely on your talent. Yi Huanyan only felt sick. If she didn't care about Su Mang's face, she would have pounded the table and left at this moment. Su Mang's face was not very good either. The annual symbolic event of the Fengshang charity dinner was planned by her. When the Fengshang charity dinner was mentioned, she, Su Mang, would definitely be mentioned. The media industry and the fashion industry had always been on good terms. They even relied on the fashion industry to improve the level of the artists under the media companies. So, over the years, the media moguls had been very respectful to Su Mang. Hong Rizhong obviously annoyed Su Mang with what happened today. President Hong, you must be joking. I don't have any talent. I just hang around casually. Yi Huanyan gave him a perfunctory look. Hong Rizhong, on the other hand, could answer anything. After all, she's the daughter of the god of stocks. She can achieve things that ordinary people can't achieve in their lifetime. Genes really can't be underestimated. Yi Huanyan took a deep breath and felt extremely disgusted. I don't have such big ambitions, and I don't need to achieve the achievements of the elders in my family. CEO Hong, you flatter me. Women don't need to have big dreams. At the end of the day, the happiness of a lifetime is still the belonging of a family. It's a pity that a talent like Miss Gu is matched with Ling Han. Yi Huanyan had originally planned to feign civility until the end of the banquet, but when she heard these words, her face instantly darkened. She lifted her eyes to stare at him without any trace of politeness and said coldly, "A pity? Compared to Ling Han, CEO Hong, do you have a suitable person to recommend to me, or do you want to recommend yourself?" When she spoke, her eyes were full of coldness and her tone was aggressive. She didn't give Hong Rizhang a chance to speak at all and stood up with her hands on the table. Even if you rely on women to make a living, you still need to be capable. CEO Hong, why don't you go back and look in the mirror and see what you look like? If you end up in Ling Han's current situation, it's another matter if you can live off a woman. Gu Huanyan Yu. Angry out of humiliation. Yi Huanyan sneered. Then I'll give you one last sentence. With that said, she placed both hands on the table and leaned over slightly to stare at the man opposite her. Her voice became colder and colder, and she said word by word, "Who are you?" Gu Huanyan, say that again. Hong Rizhang was so angry that his face turned red. Just as he was about to get up, he suddenly felt a pressure on his shoulder, so that he couldn't get up. A tall shadow came over and enveloped him. A cold man's voice sounded beside his ear. "Did my sister offend you in any way?" Hong Rizhang's face became stiff, and he suddenly turned his head back. Gu Xinian clenched his fists and made a creaking sound. He groaned and showed a painful expression. He was extremely frightened. In the eyes of the Gu family, a venture media was not even worth a fart. On the rooftop of the hotel, Li Ao took out a pack of cigarettes from his arms, shook out one and handed it to Ling Han. Ling Han reached out and took it. The lighter lit up with a blue flame in the night sky. With a pada sound, the metal case closed, and a crisp sound was heard. Smoke instantly filled between his slender and clean fingers. "You don't smoke?" Ling Han turned back and looked at Li Ao. Li Ao smiled. "I quit. Su Mang always coughs and can't smell this." Ling Han nodded slightly with a complicated expression. "I just came here to take a breath of fresh air. CEO Li, you don't need to waste time with me for the sake of Sister Su Mang. Do you think I chased you out because I thought you cared about what Hong Rizhang said?" Ling Han frowned and looked at Li Ao confusedly. "Don't worry. Let's not talk about work. I just came out to take a breath of fresh air. As you said, I don't need to waste time worrying about other people's affairs. You can't swallow your pride to ask for help, but when others take the initiative to offer to help you, you feel insulted. You can't accept it. A businessman has to be flexible." "You're not as good as your father." When he heard this, Ling Han's eyes became a little tighter. Li Ao and Ling Dongming were old acquaintances. He was Ling Dongming's junior fellow apprentice. They both graduated from the Department of Economics and Management of Lanjiang University. And Su Mang was a special girl among the poor students in the remote mountainous area sponsored by Ling Dongming at that time. She was not very special. If she hadn't been admitted to Lanjiang University, one of the top 3 universities in the country in the college entrance examination, she would have just been an ordinary girl who had been sponsored. But she was ambitious and hard-working. She walked out of the mountain, so she was lucky to continue to be sponsored by Ling Dongming. "Really? Do you still remember my father?" It had been a long time, so his state of mind was naturally different. If someone told him in front of him that he was not as good as Ling Dongming 6 years ago, he would be full of indifference, but he was unwilling to accept it in his heart. But now it didn't matter, or he admitted this fact. Of course. Li Ao clasped his hands on the edge of the rooftop and looked up at the sky. He seemed to be recalling something. "Your father appears to be an elegant, lofty, and arrogant person. However, when it comes to critical moments, he is someone who knows when to yield and when not. He has the spirit of self-sacrifice." Maybe it was because he praised Ling Dongming too much. Ling Han thought of his mother and retorted coldly, "But sometimes it is not a good word to say that he is flexible. It can also be said that he has no principles." "He is very principled." Li Ao sighed with a faint look in his eyes. "If he really has no principles, your stepmother should be Su Mang instead of Jiang Meilan." Chapter 495. Ling Han's expression froze. He frowned and stared at Li Ao. "President Li, isn't it too much to make up stories about my father and sister Su Mang?" "It's not a story. It's just that there are many things you don't know. More than 20 years ago, Ling Dongming was re-employed by Lanjiang University as a visiting professor. At that time, Su Mang, a student sponsored by him, had just been admitted to the Department of Economics and Management of Lanjiang University and became his student. After graduation, he directly entered the pleasure group. At first, he was just a secretary in the secretariat. Later, he was outstanding and was promoted to the chief secretary 2 years later. At the annual meeting of the company, Ling Dongming was drunk. Su Mang drove him home. But on the way, he heard his name from Ling Dongming's mouth. He murmured all the way, which made Su Mang confused and had a car accident. Do you know Su Mang's feelings for your father? The kind of feelings that are above love and kinship and can even sacrifice one's life. When the car accident happened, Su Mang's first reaction was not to save herself, but to throw herself at Ling Dongming. Ling Dongming lay in the hospital for 3 days. When he woke up, he heard that Su Mang had been given a notice of critical illness. He lost his usual elegant demeanor and stayed at the door of the intensive care unit all night long. Although it is reasonable, the people who are involved in it can understand best what kind of feelings a man has for a woman. Do you think your mother didn't understand anything at that time? Su Mang woke up a month later. Soon after waking up, he was discharged from the hospital and was taken home by Wen Qingwan. The three of them had a meal together and talked about everything. Your father's feelings for Su Mang are very forbearing. He thought it was a sin, so he never showed it. But feelings can't be restrained even if you restrain yourself. You should understand. Ling Han frowned and didn't comment. It was weird to listen to a man who was not very familiar with or even a stranger talk about his father's history of infidelity. After all, he was partial to his mother, so it was inevitable that he had prejudice. But your father's decision was to let Su Mang resign and never see him again. Since loyalty was out of the question, this was the last responsibility a man could bear for his marriage. But your mother meant to let them be the same as before. Do you know what it means to be the same as before? Li Ao asked. Thinking back to the past, Ling Han felt a chill in his heart. He would go home for a period of time in winter and summer vacation every year. That period of time was one of the few times he spent with his family. In that memory, Su Mang would go to their house to make dumplings every Friday night, go on an outing with their family at the end of every month, and even have a barbecue outdoors with them on New Year's Eve every year. According to what Li Ao said, at that time, Wen Qingwan already knew that Su Mang and Ling Dongming loved each other, but she still insisted that they do so. This wasn't magnanimity, this was torture. It was a torture for 3 people. That's why your father wasn't willing to come home after that. You should know that your mother was diagnosed with mild paranoia, right? In order to avoid suspicion and to make your mother feel at ease, Su Mang took the initiative to quit his job at the pleasure and went to Fengshang alone. He started from the bottom. During those years, he rarely had time to visit your family, and he never stayed for long. A broken relationship was not solely the responsibility of one person. I'm not saying this to exonerate your father. It's just that Su Mang had a knot in her heart. She always felt that she owed you and your family. But in fact, what did she do? She just silently hid her feelings for your father for so many years. What did your father do wrong? He never thought of hurting your mother. I don't know about Sister Su Mang's affairs. And if what you said is true, then she didn't do anything wrong. Ling Han looked at Li Ao coldly. But he cheated on you later, which is irrefutable evidence. But at that time, your mother had taken the initiative to divorce him. The condition was that she transferred all the shares under her name to you and agreed to let her family invest in it. 2 years before Ling Han returned to the country, his maternal uncle and cousins suddenly invested in the pleasure. He also questioned Ling Dongming on the phone. Impossible. Probably not long after your mother proposed a divorce, your father found that her depression worsened and she began to have hallucinations, so he even gave up the idea of divorce. With your means, you should have found out that Jiang Milan took Yi Huanyan to travel abroad at that time, right? They broke up. If it weren't for your stubbornness, you should have found out a lot of things very early. Li Ao looked through his mobile phone and found a photo in a cafe and handed it to him. It was a photo of a young Jiang Milan in a nurse's uniform and a young Umbo. It was a very old photo that seemed to have been taken for many years. I can't guarantee that your mother's car accident has something to do with your second uncle, but your second uncle and Jiang Mailan are old acquaintances. You should believe this photo. My mother's car accident. Ling Han gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. The veins on the back of his hands bulged, and his eyes were filled with shock and anger. If I'm not wrong, when your mother proposed a divorce, half of the Ling family's assets would be under her name. Coupled with her years of savings, the number was extraordinary. If they divorced, after she died of cancer, the first right to inherit the assets would be your maternal grandparents. Your maternal grandfather was biased towards your second uncle, so it's easy to imagine who would end up in his hands. But later, Ling Dongming suddenly changed his mind when he found out about your mother's depression, so some people couldn't hold it in anymore. The deeper you dug, the clearer you could see how evil people were. You should still remember what was in your mother's bag on the day of the car accident, right? The certificate of equity transfer. It was a transfer agreement signed by Ling Dongming to cede 12% of his shares to Umbo and his son, as well as a consent letter for Umbo to invest in the pleasure company. Jiang Mailan wanted to marry Ling Dongming to find a backer for the rest of her life, and Umbo wanted status and money. Regardless of whether they were old acquaintances or not, they hit it off on this matter. At that time, your father thought that your mother wanted to bring the equity transfer agreement to Umbo to sign, so Umbo got everything he wanted. But have you ever thought that your mother might have regretted it and wanted to go to the notary office to terminate the contract? But the dead tell no tales. No one can be sure if your mother's depression had improved or if she had accepted it. Ling Han's emotions were fluctuating. The cigarette burned out, but he didn't notice the scarlet sparks burning his fingers. Li Ao frowned and shook off the cigarette but between his fingers, so he didn't get hurt. I'm not telling you this for you to hurt yourself here. Think carefully about what you should do. The pleasure company doesn't belong to you alone. It's something that your father guarded until he died. Until he died. Ling Han's face was livid. You know so clearly about something that happened decades ago. When did you start to suspect and investigate this? That car accident. Chapter 496. When Qing Wan died in a car accident. Jiang Mailan and Ling Dongming also died in a car accident. Everyone thought it was a coincidence. But could there really be such a coincidence? It's a coincidence. 2 years ago, I went to Hong Kong and passed by Shenzhen. An old classmate treated me to a meal. During the meal, I met the truck driver who hit your father's car. At that time, he had already opened a hardware store and was a small boss. He was living a very good life. When Yi Huanyan found the rooftop, Ling Han's face was frighteningly dark. Ling Han. Yi Huanyan approached carefully. The snowflakes on the rooftop danced. She took 2 steps and her hair turned white. Ling Han didn't know how long he had been standing on the rooftop, but there was a pile of cigarette butts in the snow by his feet. Don't take what they said to heart. They're just a bunch of despicable people who want to add insult to injury. Ling Han's face was dark, and his expression was hidden in the dim light. Yi Huanyan walked closer and wanted to look at his face, but she cried out in surprise. When she came back to her senses, she was already tightly in his arms. Ling Han. She tried to call his name, but felt his shoulders tremble. She widened her eyes in shock. Her hands hovered around his waist for a long time before they finally landed on his back and patted him gently. This was the first time she saw Ling Han cry. Even though she had heard Ji Xiaoye and Su Nianhua describe how he broke down and cried in the villa after she fell off the cliff in the car accident, she didn't see it with her own eyes. Moreover, Ling Han was usually taciturn and cold, so it was really hard to imagine him crying. He hugged her very tightly, almost suffocating her. His shoulders trembled violently, and in the heavy snow, it was especially heart-wrenching. She patted his back and tried to comfort him. It doesn't matter. If the company is gone, we can start over. Even the 2 of us can start over, let alone the company. Don't give yourself so much pressure. That venture media CEO is full of evil tricks. He's nothing compared to you. From beginning to end, she did not hear Ling Han's cries, but when he let go of her, his face was full of tear stains. His eyes were red, as if they were dyed with blood. It was terrifying. Yi Huanyan realized that something was wrong and hesitated. "What happened to you?" Ling Han's face was tense, and his face was excessively pale. "Yen, I plan to take back pleasure." This was the first time Yi Huanyan had heard him mention pleasure to her on his own accord ever since he had lost it. She was stunned for a few seconds before she said carefully, "I'll help you." Yes. It was snowing heavily. Yi Huanyan looked up at Ling Han. This man was still as tall as before. His sideburns were stained with a bit of gray that did not match his age. He seemed to have experienced many vicissitudes of life, but also seemed more mature. He seemed to be different from usual. Yi Huanyan stared at him for a long time and finally saw a trace of difference. In the past, when he had to make a decision, he was calm but also cold and emotionless. But now, his calm appearance reminded Yi Huanyan of a person. Ling Dongming from 10 years ago. The banquet was still in full swing, and all the big stars took turns to perform on stage. In the press conference room outside the hall, a man's figure shuttled through the crowd. His 187 meters height was particularly eye-catching, and his handsome appearance was enough to make people mistake him for a new talent of some media company. This figure, regardless of his image, rushed through the crowd and chased a woman's figure in the direction of the toilet in the corner. "Hey, Shui, you've received the video, right? Damn, Brother Lingan's taste now is really unconventional. That Gu Huanyan, other than having the same name as Yi Huanyan, is nothing like her at all. She looks like a King Vixen." There was a voice of common hatred on the other end of the phone, which echoed, "Yes, I think this woman is not a good person. She is more like a fox spirit than that Shang Anren." Before the phone call was finished, there was a noise outside. "Hey, this is the women's toilet, you. Shui, I don't know what happened outside. I'll go out and have a look. Maybe there will be some fun." Ling Li opened the safety latch of the toilet cubicle, pushed the door and walked out. She squeezed into the crowd outside and looked at the door. At the moment when she saw the person coming, her face turned pale and she suddenly pulled the scarf around her neck to cover her face. Ling Zhan's eyes were like torches and fell on her accurately. "Before I make a move, you better follow me obediently." At the emergency exit outside the press reception room, a cold wind blew. Ling Li pulled the scarf around her neck, took off the black-rimmed glasses exclusive to otakus, pinched the bridge of her nose, and then revealed a delicate mixed-race face. She walked with Ling Zhan and nagged, "Brother, I'm also trying to help you. Didn't you come back to the country to see what kind of woman Brother Ling Han has taken a fancy to? You're also fighting for justice for Yi Huanyan, right?" "Me too, just in a different way." "Why did I come back?" "Who told you?" "Who else could it be? The whole family can see it, okay? Even the youngest one knows." "Ling Li." Ling Zhan stopped and turned to stare at her. "Do you know who you scolded as a mistress on the red carpet today? Isn't it just Brother Ling Han's new lover? The second daughter of the Gu Corporation. Who else could it be? She's obviously a coquettish woman. She's not a good person. She's Sister Yen." Ling Zhan's voice was not loud, so for a few seconds after she finished speaking, Ling Li was still talking to herself about how bad that woman was. She even scolded her for being a jinx. After a while, her voice came to an abrupt halt. Her deep brown eyes stared blankly at Ling Zhan with an expression of disbelief, as if she could not believe what she had just heard. "What did you just say?" "I don't know where you got the news to come here and make trouble, but I'm telling you now." The woman standing next to cousin on the red carpet was Sister Yen. "Are you crazy?" Ling Li raised her hand to touch Ling Zhan's forehead, but he impatiently pushed her hand away. "No, brother, you have a fever, right? How does that woman look like Yi Huanyan? She doesn't look like her at all, okay? Are you crazy?" Ling Zhan took a deep breath and said patiently, "Do you still remember the car accident from 6 years ago?" Ling Li nodded hesitantly. After the car accident, Sister Yen had severe burns on 80% of her body. She had to undergo skin grafts repeatedly for 5 years, and now she looks like this. Whether you believe it or not, I'm asking you to pack up and go back to America. Don't cause trouble for me here." Ling Li's face was full of shock. He stared at Ling Zhan in shock. Skin grafts? Plastic surgery? Oh my God! Ling Li's memory of Yi Huanyan was still stuck at the time when eldest grandma passed away. She cried until she fainted at the funeral. The pregnant woman looked so thin in a black dress. She was arrogantly splashed with cold water in the face by a mistress, but she did not receive any pity from her cousin. It made one's heart ache, but there was nothing they could do. Chapter 497. I'm going to the bathroom. You can go back first. I'm afraid that Xiao Yu and others are looking for you. Coming back from the rooftop, Ling Han stopped and said in a hoarse voice. Yi Huanyan nodded and squeezed his hand hard. Don't worry. Everything will be fine. Okay. At the charity banquet, Li Ao just returned to his seat. Hong Rizhang was joking with several bosses at the next table. From time to time, the words, pleasure group, fell into Su Mang's ears. A villain gets what he wants. Su Mang drank a mouthful of wine with slight anger in her eyes. Li Ao patted her shoulder and lowered his voice. I'm afraid that he won't be complacent for long. Su Mang raised her eyes. How is Ling Han? He's fine. Li Ao looked indifferent. You don't have to be so nervous about Ling Han. Don't forget that he has Gu's group behind him now. Outsiders don't know the close relationship between him and Gu's group. They only think that the second miss of the Gu family is playing with men. Don't you know? With her, I'm afraid that Hong Rizhang's plan to buy pleasure group will fail. According to Ling Han's character, he may not be willing to ask Yen Yen for help. That's because he hasn't been forced to do so. Su Mang was slightly stunned. She stared at Li Ao for a few seconds and said in a hoarse voice, What did you say to him? Half of it. He guessed the rest by himself. Su Mang's face tightened. Li Ao, I said that this matter has nothing to do with him. You promised me that you wouldn't tell me. He needs a little stimulation. Li Ao held her hand under the table with a comforting look. If we don't give him a little stimulation at this time, he will be useless. Su Mang frowned, and her sullen look gradually disappeared. What's more, he has the right to know these things. Even if we don't tell him, he will find out by himself one day. It's for his own good to tell him early so that he can take precautions. Schemes from family members were often the most blinding. That was because you would always be less vigilant against your family members. Subconsciously, you would not be fully prepared against them. There would always be a bit of leeway. However, family members would always stab you in the back. Even if you were prepared, you would still be caught off guard. While they were talking, Yi Huanyan had already returned, holding up the corner of her dress. There was some worry on her face, but it was not obvious. By the time she returned to her seat, she had already regained her previous calm. Su Mang glanced at her worriedly and asked tentatively, How is it? Didn't Ling Han come back with you? He went to the bathroom. He's fine. Yi Huanyan lowered her voice and said, Sister Su Mang, you don't have to do what I asked you to do. He has thought it through and made all the preparations. Su Mang was slightly stunned. After a while, he nodded slightly and looked back at Li Ao thoughtfully. Just as Li Ao had said, this stimulation had come at the right time. Hong Rizhang was still chatting with the boss sitting next to him. Seeing Yi Huanyan come back, he straightened his suit, pulled the chair back to his original seat, and sat right across from Yi Huanyan. He looked at her with a complicated expression, but he was not as arrogant as before. Boss Hong, do you have anything else to say? Yi Huanyan threw a sentence angrily. All the people at the table held their breath and dared not to say anything. Just now, when Yi Huanyan was not here, everyone saw that Gu Xinian pressed Hong Rizhang with one hand. No one knew what he said in Hong Rizhang's ear, but his face changed greatly. Then, when someone at the table mentioned the things between Yi Huanyan and Ling Han, he did not dare to belittle them at will. Instead, He went to the next seat to talk with his tail between his legs. It could be said that the young boss of the Gu family was very protective of his sister. Some people thought that Gu Huanyan had given birth and got married, so the Gu family did not care too much about her. So, they all changed their minds and wanted to talk to her more to get close to her. Nothing, excuse me. I need to go to the bathroom. Hong Rizhong's face was not very good. He probably did not expect that Yi Huanyan would not give him any face at all. She was so aggressive as soon as she came up. He was embarrassed for a while and could not stay there anymore. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Coincidentally, the opening ceremony on the stage had just ended. Su Nianhua's singing partner, Chan Ying, dressed in a long-sleeved gown, performed a sword dance as an opening curtain call. The tide-like clattering of the waves of applause covered up the delicate atmosphere on the table. Why do I feel that Xiao Yu is not in good spirits today? Yi Huanyan's eyes fell on the side of the stage. She always felt that Ji Xiaoye's face was extraordinarily pale today. Su Mang followed her eyes and nodded. Yes, she is not in good spirits. She must be busy. She should have stayed up for several nights for this banquet. It is like this every year at this time. After the banquet is over, let her have a good rest. Well, she hasn't been home for several days. See, my brother took the initiative to come to her. I used to hear that the young boss of the Goose Group was cold and indifferent and never missed a woman. I didn't expect that there was an exception. And I didn't expect that this exception was your little apprentice, Xiao Yu. Yi Huanyan took over the words. They chatted for a while, and the atmosphere was much more harmonious. In the bathroom of the side hall of the hotel, Ling Han was about to push the door when a familiar voice came into his ears. Mr. Su, you'd better consider my suggestion carefully. The pleasure group is now a big building that is about to collapse. If you don't prepare for yourself and find your next company in advance, you are playing a joke on your own future. After all, the time of an artist is very precious. You should know this better than me. In the cubicle, the slender fingers slightly curled and stopped the movement of opening the door. Thank you for your concern, President Hong. I don't think that the pleasure group will collapse like this. After all, it has a century-old foundation there. It is very stable step by step. It's better to be safe than sorry. Besides, the current president of the pleasure group is not Ling Han. Do you think that people like the father and son of the Wan family can be trusted? Do you think that they can run the pleasure group well? President Hong, I am indebted to President Ling, and he never gave up on me when I was at my lowest point. No matter who the current president of the pleasure group is, this group is the hard work of several generations of the Ling family. If I leave at this time, I would be too ungrateful. Hong Rizhong chuckled, and his face was full of contempt. You are saying this now because you think that Ling Han has the Gu Corporation as his backing, so you have nothing to fear, right? Do you really think that the pleasure group will return to his hands? I am not afraid to tell you that I have already discussed with Umbo and his son. As long as Umbo comes out of the detention center, they will sign the acquisition contract. What pleasure group, in the future, will only be a subsidiary of my venture media? How about it, now you still insist on staying at the pleasure group? Even if you stay at the pleasure group, when the acquisition contract comes into effect, all of you who were originally under the pleasure group will belong to the venture media group. It is just that compared to now, when that time comes, it will be two different things. Taking the initiative to leave the pleasure group to join the venture media group was undoubtedly a show of goodwill to Hong Rizhong. Su Nianhua had been appearing frequently recently, and his declining popularity in the past was recovering. With his popularity in the country, poaching and signing him was undoubtedly an important blow to the reputation of the venture media group. Chapter 498. Su Nianhua was half a head taller than Hong Rizhong. Even though Hong Rizhong had a cold aura around him, he didn't lose out to him at all. It was as if this person in front of him wasn't a big shot in the media industry who could pose a threat to him. His attitude was still neither servile nor overbearing, with a sense of alienation. Thank you for your kind intentions, President Hong. Since President Hong is certain that Pleasure Group will be acquired by Venture Media, then let's wait for that day. 1 or 2 days won't make a difference. Su Nianhua, don't fail to appreciate my kindness. Hong Rizhong's expression changed. You're just an outdated singer. Do you think you can become popular again just because you have Gu Huanyan backing you? What do you mean? What do I mean? Hong Rizhong laughed coldly. Don't think that others don't know what kind of person Gu Huanyan is. You and Ling Han get along harmoniously, and you're dead set on her. Why, now you're so self-righteous about relying on a woman to make a living? Su Nianhua's expression darkened instantly. President Hong, don't go overboard with your words. Yan Yan and I are simply... Yan Yan? Hong Rizhong's gaze became more ambiguous. You call her so intimately. Why, did you accidentally call her by her pet name in bed? You're slandering me. Su Nianhua had a good upbringing since he was young, and he rarely encountered situations where he argued with others. Even though he knew that the truth was completely different from what Hong Rizhong said, he couldn't find any words to retort. With a bang, the door of the washroom was slammed open. A tall figure walked down the stairs and came forward with a gloomy face. President Hong is so overbearing. Do you have any improper thoughts about my friend? I've seen many unspoken rules in this industry, but this is the first time I've seen someone forcing a woman into prostitution in the bathroom. President Hong, you've really opened my eyes. Ling Han, you. Ling Han stood beside Su Nianhua and stared coldly at Hong Rizhong. His face was full of ridicule. I don't reject homosexuality, but isn't it a little disgusting for you to threaten and tempt a straight man who already has a family? Hong Rizhong's expression changed. What nonsense are you talking about? When did I? No? Why don't I go out and shout for someone to judge? Ling Han curled his lips and said meaningfully, Ling Han, we're both decent people. What do you mean by pouring dirty water on my head? Hong Rizhong glared at him angrily. How can you say that? What's there to be ashamed of? You're the CEO of Venture Media after all. Now, you're even thick-skinned enough to poach my people. Compared to CEO Hong's thick skin, I'm already being lenient. Ling Han stared coldly at Hong Rizhong and said condescendingly, before the contract expires, Su Nianhua is part of the Pleasure Corporation. You don't have to worry about him, CEO Hong. Humph. Hong Rizhong sneered. He's part of the Pleasure Corporation, but what about CEO Ling? If I remember correctly, you don't have anything to do with the Pleasure Corporation anymore, right? Whether I have anything to do with them or not, it doesn't stop me from standing here and talking to CEO Hong, right? You. Hong Rizhong frowned and looked angry. He seemed to have thought of something and took a deep breath before saying slowly, You're just a stray dog, yet you can be so smug just by relying on a woman. I've really underestimated you. If you have the time to think of ways to help the Pleasure Corporation retain their artistes, why don't you think of ways to retain the heart of the second daughter of the Gu family? You don't have to worry about that, CEO Hong. No matter what I want to retain or gain, it's much easier than CEO Hong trying to curry favor with my woman and then my artiste. Hong Rizhong was so angry that his face turned green and he couldn't say a word. Su Nianhua followed closely behind Ling Han as they walked out of the washroom. This was the first time he saw Ling Han arguing with someone. Looking at such a taciturn person who didn't lose in a battle of words, Su Nianhua couldn't help but admire him. When it comes to arguing, Hong Rizhong is really lacking compared to you. When we talk about the acquisition later, he'll know that I'm not just arguing with him. Su Nianhua was slightly taken aback. He raised his head and looked at Ling Han. He was standing in the shadows, looking towards the direction of the stage. He could only see the outline of his face. It was very distinct and three-dimensional, with a hint of coldness. What attracted Su Nianhua's attention was the certainty in those cold eyes. Acquisition. Su Nianhua mulled over these 3 words in his heart. When he looked up again, there was a hint of realization in his eyes. You're finally ready to retaliate? There was a hint of anticipation in his tone, which made Ling Han look surprised. He turned to look at him and frowned. He stared at him inquiringly. Your reaction? He seemed to be looking forward to it. Previously, Xiao Rou told me that when the time is right, you'll definitely retaliate. She even promised me that Venture Media's acquisition of the Pleasure Corporation would definitely turn things around at the last minute. Zheng Rou said that? Yes. Ling Han hesitated for a few seconds. Zheng Rou has learned something about business operation. No, she reads a lot of novels and movies. Ling Han's mouth twitched. He decisively withdrew his gaze from Su Nianhua. Well, she reads a lot of novels and movies. Good reason. The theme of the charity dinner was auction. When Ling Han returned to his seat, President Qiao, who had ridiculed him before, had already won the bid for a female artist's concert battle gown. The final price of the battle gown was 1.5 million, which meant that President Qiao had to pay 10 times the price, which was 15 million, for this battle gown. And this battle gown could only be gifted to the bidder. This rule was set when Su Mang was still alive. The host asked President Qiao and his wife, who was very willing to be in the limelight, to go on the stage and gift the battle gown to the bidder. The people below watched the fun and talked about it. President Qiao has suffered a loss this time. He doesn't look good. It's the first time that I've heard of such a thing. 10 times the price. If the battle gown was sold at 15 million, wouldn't he have to pay 150 million? It's too bad. 150 million is nothing. I heard that it was not proposed by Su Mang at all. Since Feng Shang held this charity banquet, it has only happened twice. This is the second time. Do you know how much money someone bid for the first time? How much? 500 million. The sound of discussion spread to the direction of the main table. It seemed that no one at the main table knew about this. They all stretched out their heads and looked around. Who was the first one? Su Mang looked a little embarrassed. Yi Huanyan looked at Li Ao with a smile. He lowered his voice and said, "It seems that the story of President Li spending a lot of money to win a beauty smile 15 years ago has become a legend." Chapter 499. 15 years ago, Su Mang just became the chief editor of Feng Shang. Because of her sharp style, she offended many people. At the Feng Shang charity banquet, she was framed by her opponent. The swimsuit of an actress that was supposed to be auctioned was replaced by a set of black lace underwear. After the red cloth was untied, there was a private photo of Su Mang wearing underwear on the big screen. Originally, the whole banquet was almost ruined by this accident. Of course, the underwear was not the one that Su Mang had worn at all. However, the person who framed her made a great effort to find the exact same one, deliberately making Su Mang a fool. There was an uproar at the banquet. 15 years ago, the society was still conservative. Even though Feng Shang was a women-themed magazine, there were always underwear photos. However, it was really outrageous for the chief editor to take out her own underwear in such a serious charity auction. But Su Mang was a woman of iron. After her face turned blue for a while, she went to the stage in person, grabbed the host's microphone, and introduced the experience of wearing the underwear. Her words were humorous and witty. In the end, she also explained, "By the way, let me explain. This underwear is brand new. I like to buy 2 sets when I buy things. If I want to take it back and give it to my wife or girlfriend, as long as the size is the same as mine, it is absolutely okay." This witty remark made the banquet return to the theme of charity from the discussion. It also started the Feng Shang charity banquet. Every year, the auction items of the Feng Shang charity banquet were strange and unconventional. In the following 15 years, there were auctions of a strand of hair of a football player, a lipstick used by an actress, and even a portrait drawn on a napkin. There were whispers in the crowd. At that time, no matter how much the bidder bid, he bid at 10 times the price. In the end, he bid at a high price of 500 million. This is the highest price of an auction item in the Feng Shang charity banquet so far. Nonsense. Su Mang muttered in a low voice, "Why are these people so gossipy?" Yi Huanyan rarely saw Su Mang blushing. Li Ao next to her looked at her with a gentle and doting smile. Li Ao had been with Su Mang for so many years. Finally, he could see the light. It's not nonsense. Yi Huanyan smiled and defended for the onlookers. Su Mang glared at her angrily. You talk too much. Didn't I speak for your man just now? Yi Huanyan stuck out her tongue. Yes. I was wrong. Su Mang blushed even more and turned around to glare at Li Ao. Look at what you have done. That's right. Li Ao's good deed had turned the underwear, which should have been buried under the various unconventional auction items in the past 15 years, into a legend. It couldn't be denied, even if he wanted to. Yi Huanyan smiled gently and turned to look at Ling Han. I'm going to look for Xiao Yu. She didn't look well just now. Ling Han nodded slightly. Ji Xiaoye was wearing a beautiful and expensive gown, holding a walkie-talkie in her hand. She was anxiously watching the proceedings of the banquet and scolding people into the walkie-talkie. Little Zhang, how many times have I told you? When the host is intertwining lines, take the star to the backstage and get ready first. Later, she won't be able to catch up with the time. When Yi Huanyan walked over, she had just finished scolding people. The host on the stage had just asked President Chow to make a lot of meaningless promotional slogans for his company. He finally got off the stage with great difficulty. At this moment, the performer behind him had already gone on the stage. Damn it! What do you mean? Yi Huanyan came out from behind her and interrupted. 15 million yuan. It's a good start. The performer didn't miss the time to go on the stage. Does she deserve to die? Seeing that it was Yi Huanyan, Ji Xiaoye came to her senses. She rolled her eyes at President Chow and Mrs. Chow, who went down from the other side of the stage and complained to Yi Huanyan, what a weirdo. Just by donating 15 million yuan, they can't wait to talk on the stage all night? They really think that this is a general meeting of their corporate culture. The audience below is almost falling asleep. I wasted 15 minutes. It's estimated that they have to delete 2 programs. Yi Huanyan couldn't help laughing. It's just 2 programs. It's worth it to exchange 15 million yuan. I'm tired. I have to greet the performers who haven't gone on the stage. My head is about to explode. When I was an assistant, I was not so tired. I really don't know how Chief Editor Su survived. I see that she looks radiant and full of spirit every day. I'm far from her. Everyone has their own responsibility. Sister Su Mang is not as careful as you. She has to keep an eye on such a small thing. Yi Huanyan glanced at the walkie-talkie in her hand. You don't let your assistant do this. I really admire you. When Yi Huanyan participated in Feng Shang's charity banquet before, Su Mang was hardly busy. It was the executives of Feng Shang who were running around. She sat at the main table elegantly and dignified, drinking and chatting with the people around her. The whole banquet passed quickly. She was not like the current chief editor, who was wearing a dress but doing the work of a staff member. Don't mention it. It was supposed to be Lillian's job, but she had diarrhea today. I was worried about her new assistant, so I had to do it myself. While speaking, Ji Xiaoye's forehead was sweating. Yi Huanyan frowned. You don't look well. Do you want to have a rest? I'm fine. I'm just a little dizzy. Ji Xiaoye held the chair beside her and took a deep breath. When the next program is over, there will be a speech. I'll be fine after the speech. You're really fine. Look at your pale lips. Yi Huanyan looked worried. Really? Ji Xiaoye touched her lips subconsciously. I must have just drunk with others and lost my lipstick. Today's makeup is light. I'll be fine after touching it up. While speaking, she took out a makeup mirror and lipstick from her small bag to touch up her makeup. How is it? Do you feel better? After Ji Xiaoye finished touching up her makeup, she looked up at Yi Huanyan. I do feel better. Is your speech long? Let me take a look. I'll try to make it short. Not many people are listening anyway. The sooner you're done, the sooner my brother can send you home to rest. I heard from Sister Su Mang that you've been pulling all-nighters. Ji Xiaoye took out the prepared speech script from her bag. It's all done by the secretary. I didn't read it carefully. I'll just read it later. What's this? It's a mess. I'm not going to read it. Later, you just have to bow and thank everyone for coming here to participate in this grand event. Also, thank everyone for their kindness. The subsequent reconstruction of the primary school in the mountain area will be privately sent to each company. You're too official and direct. Ji Xiaoye rolled her eyes at Yi Huanyan. As they chatted, the program ended. The host announced that it was time for Chief Editor Ji to give a speech. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm going on stage. Ji Xiaoye stuffed a bag, lipstick, and makeup mirror into Yi Huanyan's arms. Then, she took her speech script and went on stage. When she went up the stairs, Ji Xiaoye obviously staggered. Yi Huanyan's heart tightened. Chapter 500. Hello, everyone. I am the chief editor of Fengshang, Ji Xiaoye. Thank you very much to everyone in the audience. Today, we have actors, singers, writers, directors, screenwriters, and bosses from various industries in the audience. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to participate in Fengshang's charity night. Listening to Ji Xiaoye slowly read through the script, Yi Huanyan's heart gradually calmed down. Her breathing was steady, and there wasn't a trace of urgency or panic. When Ji Xiaoye stumbled on the stairs just now, she was scared half to death. She thought that she was going to roll off the stage. Luckily, she managed to stand firm and the lights weren't on the side of the stage, so not many people saw her. Yi Huanyan glanced at the script in Ji Xiaoye's hands. Based on her current unhurried reading speed, it would take her at least 10 minutes to finish speaking. She didn't know where this secretary came from, but she was quoting from classics at length. She yawned while hugging a pile of things. Just as she turned around, she heard a very familiar sentence from the stage behind her. Thank you for your kindness. No matter how much you donate, it is a kindness to the children in the mountainous areas. I will personally supervise the transformation of Xiao Shui in the mountainous areas and send it to each donor's company for everyone to supervise. These words. Yi Huanyan turned around and looked at the stage in confusion. There was a tidal wave of applause from the audience. The speech ended just like that, and it didn't even take 2 minutes. The host was obviously a little confused. Ji Xiaoye gave him a look, and he hurriedly went on stage to take over the script and announce the following activities. Yi Huanyan faintly sensed that something was wrong. Ji Xiaoye got off the stage from the other side. The lights on the other side were even dimmer. Yi Huanyan saw her slowly squatting down while supporting herself against the wall. Her eyes suddenly narrowed, and she lifted the corner of her dress and rushed over. But someone was faster than her. Gu Xinian had just come out of the restroom when he saw Yi Huanyan sprinting backstage in the dark. He glanced in the direction she was running and his expression instantly changed. In the hospital, Gu Xinian was pacing back and forth in front of the operating room. His brows were furrowed, and his expression was frighteningly dark. When the door finally opened, the nurse walked out, took off her mask and asked, "Who's the family member?" "I am." Gu Xinian stepped forward. "Sign here, and we can start the operation." Ji Xiaoye had acute appendicitis. If it wasn't for the fact that she couldn't take the pain and fainted on the edge of the stage, she would have kept it in. Gu Xinian picked up the pen and asked hesitantly, "There won't be any risks in this surgery, right?" "Sir, all surgeries are risky." The nurse who spoke did not recognize Gu Xinian, and her attitude was very impatient. "As family members, you should be more careful. She's pregnant, and she has to be careful even when taking medicine. You guys are good, and you even gave her appendicitis. How careless." "Pregnant?" Yi Huanyan exclaimed and walked forward. "You said she's pregnant? You didn't know?" The nurse was stunned. When she came back to her senses, her expression became more and more unpleasant. She said in a bad mood, "Is this a joke?" Seeing Gu Xinian's guilty and distressed expression, Yi Huanyan hurriedly asked, "Will this pregnancy affect the appendicitis surgery? Will it increase the risk?" "I've already said that as long as it's an operation, there will be risks. We can't completely guarantee that there won't be any risks, especially when you didn't know that she was pregnant before. You didn't take care of yourself, right? Her body may not be in good condition. Then can we treat it conservatively? Yi Huanyan asked again. Yes, we can, but in the early stages of pregnancy, surgery is usually the choice. It won't affect the uterus much. Moreover, if we treat it conservatively, the pregnant woman will be the one in pain. Our attending doctor recommends surgery. Yi Huanyan glanced at Gu Xinian. From what the nurse said, the risk was not high. However, because of Ji Xiaoye's pregnancy, this operation was indeed risky, and it could not completely avoid the damage to the fetus. If they treated it conservatively, they would definitely be able to ensure the health and safety of the fetus, but the one who would suffer would be Ji Xiaoye, who would be hospitalized later. With a few swipes, Gu Xinian handed the signed surgery contract to the nurse. Surgery. His voice was dull. Even though his movements were clean and neat, there was an indescribable struggle in his eyes. After the door of the operating theater closed, Yi Huanyan tugged at Gu Xinian's sleeve. Brother, it'll be fine. It'll definitely be fine. It's just an appendicitis operation. Gu Xinian clenched his fingers. Yi Huanyan could clearly feel his stiffness through his suit. As they were waiting, Yi Huanyan's phone rang. She took out her phone and looked up at Gu Xinian. It's Mom. The caller ID showed that it was 1E. She had probably heard about the incident at the dinner party from Chen Yin. Gu Xinian pursed his lips and frowned. Don't tell Mom and Dad about Xiao Yu's pregnancy for now. Yi Huanyan nodded. Okay, I know. It was better to be safe than sorry. The old madam had waited for so long for her grandson. If she were to tell her that she was pregnant now, she would probably be worried to death. After pressing the answer button, Wan Yi's voice came from the other end of the line. Yen, what's wrong with Xiao Yu? Yin didn't tell us clearly when she came back. What do you mean by she fainted? What happened? Is it serious? It's fine. She's in the hospital now. They said it's appendicitis. I don't think she'll be able to eat well for the next 2 days. The other end of the line was slightly relieved. Appendicitis? That's good. Your brother is next to her, right? Yeah. Tell him to be more careful with his wife. Seriously, Xiao Yu has been complaining about losing weight every day. What's there to lose weight with that small body of hers? This brat must have said something to someone. He likes thin women. This appendicitis is most likely caused by him. Pass the phone to him. I'll give him a good scolding. Yi Huanyan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Mom, you're blaming my brother for this appendicitis. Aren't you being a little too biased? Xiao Yu's condition was also an accident. The hospital doesn't allow me to answer the phone. I'll hang up first. I'll talk to you after the surgery. Sigh. Without waiting for Wen Yi to speak, Yi Huanyan hung up the phone. She was afraid that she would reveal her nervousness if she said too much. After hanging up the phone, she carefully glanced at Gu Xinian. His face was still gloomy. She didn't dare to let him answer the phone. No one knew him better than his mother. Once he picked up the phone and heard Gu Xinian's tone, she couldn't hide it anymore. It was snowing heavily. If old Madame Yang got anxious and drove straight to the hospital, it would be too late for regrets if something happened on the way. The lights in the operating room were still on. Gu Xinian stood motionless at the door like a statue. Ling Han bought some food. He glanced at Gu Xinian and handed him a bottle of water. Gu Xinian unscrewed the cap and took a sip. He squeezed the plastic bottle so hard that it made a cracking sound. Ling Han was about to say something when Yi Huanyan interrupted him. Forget it. She sighed helplessly and reached out to take the food from Ling Han. What did you buy? At this moment, if she continued to be nervous, the atmosphere in the hospital corridor would really freeze. Ling Han opened the plastic bag and revealed the box inside. His expression was gentle. It's your favorite cheesecake. Chapter 501. Yi Huanyan's face warmed. She reached out to take it, but Ling Han's body suddenly swayed. It was as if he had slipped, and he suddenly staggered and fell. Yi Huanyan cried out in alarm. She instinctively reached out to hold him, but the huge inertia from his fall made her fall to the ground together with him. Her head hit his chest, and they fell into a ball. Gu Xinian finally came back to his senses and hurried over. Ling Han groaned, but endured the pain and helped Yi Huanyan up from his arms. He asked, "How are you? Are you hurt anywhere?" Yi Huanyan held her forehead and stood up with Gu Xinian's outstretched hand. She teased, "I'm fine. Why did you fall just like that? People who didn't know better would think that you were trying to blackmail me." After that, she reached out to Ling Han. "Come, get up." Ling Han's eyes swept over his wrist, and there was a trace of bitterness in his eyes. "Get up," Yi Huanyan urged. The corners of Ling Han's mouth twitched. He held Yi Huanyan's hand and used his other hand to support himself on the floor tiles. He exerted all his strength and managed to stand up halfway. But it was only halfway before he fell down. If it wasn't for Gu Xinian's quick reflexes, he would have pulled Yi Huanyan down again. What happened? Gu Xinian helped Ling Han stand up. His original anxiety was disturbed by Ling Han's abnormal behavior. Like Yi Huanyan, he looked at him in shock. "What's wrong with your leg?" Yi Huanyan asked. Ling Han was helped to the sofa by Gu Xinian and sat down. His eyes were dim, and he clenched his fingers. He seemed to be a little guilty. "Nothing. It's just the after-effects." His voice was unbelievably muffled. It was obvious that something was wrong. "What after-effects? Didn't you just recover? Chinese medicine treats the root of the problem. Didn't my mom give you acupuncture?" Yi Huanyan raised her voice and looked anxious. Gu Xinian frowned and said coldly, "Ling Han, there's no need to hide from our family. You can't hide from us either. Yesterday, Aunt Zhang said that you couldn't move your right leg at all. But today you can walk freely. I wanted to ask you this at the banquet." Ling Han knew that he wouldn't be able to hide the truth from the brother and sister, so he obediently confessed everything. "I know that this medicine has side effects, but it will only last for half a year. After half a year, there is still hope for a full recovery." Ling Han had a guilty look on his face. He lowered his head, not daring to look into Yi Huanyan's eyes. "Are you crazy?" Yi Huanyan stood up abruptly. "What quick-acting treatment? Paying the price of not being able to move for half a year in exchange for you being able to move freely for a few hours? Ling Han, is there something wrong with your brain?" Gu Xinian saw that his sister was out of control and hurriedly pulled her back. Yen, don't panic." He glanced at Ling Han and asked suspiciously, "What medicine?" "I've never heard Mom say that there is any medicine that can have this effect." Ling Han frowned. "Auntie said that it's called a moment, 3/4, and is extracted from the silver needles. Through the acupuncture points, it can temporarily stimulate the nerves and force the muscles and nerves that have lost their activity and conditioned reflexes to temporarily become sensitive and return to their normal state." "Then what about the side effects?" Gu Xinian asked. "Wasn't your left leg fine before?" "The medicine enters the muscles and travels along the nerves, so both legs are affected. Auntie said that this kind of forced stimulation will damage the muscles and nerves, so it will take half a year to recuperate. Actually, it can't be considered a complete side effect." Ling Han tried to explain, but Yi Huanyan glared at him fiercely. She said angrily, "What's wrong with you? Why did you ask Mom to use this kind of medicine on you? What difference does it make if you don't come to the event tonight?" Gu Xinian coughed dryly. Yen, don't go too far. He's doing this for you." "What do you mean for me? I can't come in or leave by myself." Yi Huanyan was so angry that her eyes turned red. Her eyes were filled with tears. It wasn't easy to say that there was some improvement. "What do you mean by half a year of recuperation? You're too much. Can't you ask for my opinion before doing this kind of thing?" Seeing that Yi Huanyan was about to cry, Ling Han panicked. Yen, I'm sorry. I didn't think it through." "What do you mean by that?" You're crazy. While they were gloomy, the door of the operating theater opened. Gu Sinian quickly left the two of them behind and strode over. How is it? He asked anxiously. The surgery was successful. The pregnant woman and child are fine. The doctor removed his mask and smiled at Gu Sinian. President Gu, the appendicitis surgery is not a major surgery. Why are you so worried? The young nurse who was following behind the doctor heard the words President Gu, and her expression changed slightly. Just as the surgery was about to start, the assistant director suddenly became the chief surgeon. This was enough to shock the group of nurses. It happened so suddenly that no one had the time to ask. Now that they were out, the young nurse snapped back to her senses. Who else could get the assistant director to do this for President Gu? Gu Sinian did not notice the young nurse's uneasiness. He did not remember this nurse at all. He asked the doctor directly, "Can I see her now?" The effect of the anesthetic has not worn off yet. Mrs. Ling is weak and will probably wake up tomorrow morning. Gu Sinian nodded slightly and thanked the doctor. On the other hand, Yi Huanyan was crying. She was still angry at Ling Han for acting on his own accord. After hearing that Ji Xiaoye was fine, she picked up her bag and left. Ling Han sat on the sofa and chased after her, but he could not do anything about it. You should stay here for a night and reflect on yourself. Yi Huanyan threw this sentence and entered the elevator. Gu Sinian stood at the entrance of the operating theater. He originally wanted to follow the nurse to the ward, but when he saw this, he turned around and glanced at Ling Han. Sit here for a while. I'll get a nurse to bring you a wheelchair later. The brother and sister were the same. Without waiting for Ling Han to say anything, they disappeared without a trace like a gust of wind. Ling Han was left sitting on the sofa in the spacious corridor. He could not leave even if he wanted to. The last surgery in the middle of the night had just ended, and the doctors and nurses had just left. At this moment, he could not call anyone even if he wanted to. Yi Huanyan parked the car in front of the old mansion. Wearing a snowstorm, she stormed into the house and slammed the door loudly. Fu Yingxiang had just come out of the bathroom after taking a shower. When Yi Huanyan slammed the door shut, the cold wind caused by Fu Yingxiang shivered. She asked in surprise, "What's going on?" Yi Huanyan angrily sat down on the sofa and did not say anything for a long time. The noise was not small. The two elders next door were also worried about Ji Xiaoye and could not sleep. Not long after Yi Huanyan sat down, there was a knock on the door. "Yan Yan, are you back?" Seeing that Yi Huanyan did not say anything, Fu Yingxiang quickly replied, "Yes, she just came back. The door is not locked. Aunt Gu, you can just open the door." "Oh, okay." The person at the door responded. Wen Yi put on a coat and hurried in. As she walked, she asked, "It's snowing so heavily outside. Yan Yan, you came back alone? How is Xiao Yu? Did the surgery go well?" Chapter 502. Seeing that Yi Huanyan was silent and her eyes were red, it was obvious that she had been crying. Wen Yi's expression suddenly changed. "What's the matter? What happened?" It would have been better if she hadn't asked. As soon as she asked, Yi Huanyan suddenly burst into tears and sobbed, "Mom, why did you do that?" Wen Yi panicked. She turned around to look at Fu Yingxiang but only saw a confused look on her face. Fu Yingxiang walked out of the bathroom door while drying her hair and explained, "I just came out of the shower." She came back and sat down without saying anything. Wen Yi panicked. "What did I do? What does it have to do with Xiao Yu's surgery? Why did you promise Ling Han to give him that kind of medicine?" Yi Huanyan held back her sobs and asked intermittently. Fu Yingxiang looked at Wen Yi hesitantly. "What medicine?" Wen Yi also looked confused. After a while, she suddenly came back to her senses and asked hesitantly, "Yan Yan, you're not talking about a minute, right?" Yi Huanyan nodded and cried even more miserably. "What about the side effects of half a year? Are you going to let him sit in a wheelchair?" When she thought about how Ling Han would have to go to Venture Media to discuss business with the villain Hong Rizhang, she became even more angry. If he had to sit in a wheelchair, he was destined to be ridiculed even more. Wan Yi laughed out loud. "Mom, how can you still laugh?" Yi Huanyan couldn't believe it. "How much do you dislike him to be like this?" "You're too much." "I'm too much?" Wan Yi pointed at her own nose and pursed her lips. "If you say that again, I'm going to get angry." "You're angry?" "I'm angry." "If I'm angry, I won't tell you the truth. I'll let you and Ling Han hug each other and cry. Anyway, I don't feel bad." "You two feel bad for each other." "The truth." Yi Huanyan's expression froze, and her crying gradually stopped. "What truth?" Wan Yi was originally squatting in front of Yi Huanyan. At this moment, she supported herself on the sofa and stood up. She patted her waist, yawned, and walked to the single-seater sofa and sat down. "The truth is, I was just teasing that kid." "Teasing him?" Yi Huanyan almost screamed. Wan Yi still had a righteous look on her face. "I did use some potion in front of him, but that potion has always been used. It's just that this time, the dosage is a little higher, so it can help him temporarily move freely." "What about the side effects?" Yi Huanyan asked anxiously. "The side effect is that it won't last for long. You'll need to rest more after that." Wan Yi looked relaxed. "Do you think I'm some kind of poison expert? How could you two believe such low-level words to coax a child? You even came back to give me a dirty look." "My dear daughter, you're really good at this." Yi Huanyan looked at her mother skeptically. "Are you serious? If you don't believe me, then forget it. It has nothing to do with me, even if he's paralyzed for the rest of his life. It's all the result of your prayers that he'll be able to stand up tomorrow." Wan Yi stood up and pretended to be unhappy. She pretended to leave. Fu Yingxiong gave Yi Huanyan a look. She hurriedly stood up and pulled her mother. "Mom, I was wrong. What were you wrong about?" "I shouldn't have questioned you. You were wrong." Wan Yi turned around and held her hand. "You were wrong because you cared for him too much. You were too worried about him." Yi Huanyan was slightly stunned. Wan Yi sighed and patted the back of her hand. She said unwillingly, "Previously, I lied to him because I wanted to see if he valued you more than his legs. I just wanted to lie and tease him, but I didn't expect to shoot myself in the foot." That rascal agreed without even blinking an eye. "Then, there was the matter with Xiao Yu, and the two of you didn't make it back in time. Look, you caught up with him when the effects of the drug wore off. You cheated your own daughter." "Mom, is Xiao Yu okay?" Wan Yi suddenly changed the topic. "She's fine. The surgery was a success," Yi Huanyan quickly replied. "Okay, then it's fine. I'm going back to sleep. I'm so sleepy." Wan Yi stretched and quietly pulled her hand out of Yi Huanyan's grasp. She walked to the door, looking a little lonely. Yi Huanyan was feeling guilty. She suddenly leaned on the doorframe and sighed. She said in a very pretentious tone, "It's not good to raise a son and a daughter. When they grow up, they have to worry about others. It's so sad." Fu Yingxiong glanced at Yi Huanyan. Yi Huanyan was stunned. When she heard Wan Yi's lamenting, she suddenly remembered something. She stood up and said, "Mom, Xiao Yu is pregnant." "What?" Wan Yi turned her head abruptly. There was no sadness on her face. Instead, she looked pleasantly surprised. "Really? When did this happen?" Fu Yingxiong finally couldn't hold it in anymore. She burst out laughing. "Aunt Gu, if you hold it in a little longer, you'll get an Oscar." Wan Yi snapped back to her senses. A trace of resentment flashed across her eyes. She waved her hand without hesitation. "Let's talk about the Oscars later. Hurry up and tell me about the pregnancy." The news of Ji Xiaoye's pregnancy had a huge impact on her. As for acting as a lonely mother with her daughter, she could temporarily put it aside for the time being. Yi Huanyan breathed a sigh of relief. Her low spirits were instantly swept away. It was late at night. It was snowy outside. A taxi stopped at the entrance of the old mansion. Ling Zhan got out of the car. He was wearing a black suit with a black down jacket. A large hat with a fluffy collar fluttered in the howling north wind. "Brother, I'll just stay in a hotel." "Get out." Ling Zhan pulled on the car door. He was in a deadlock. After a while, a leg slowly stretched out from inside. "If I let you stay in a hotel, you'll go to heaven. Today you're a reporter. Tomorrow you'll be a doctor. Did you not have enough cosplay in America?" "Brother, it hurts." "Don't pull me, I'll walk on my own." "Hurry up, it's too late. No one will clean your room. You'll sleep in my room tonight." "What?" Ling Li pouted and blinked. "I'm already so old. It's not appropriate to share a room with you, right? I'll sleep on the sofa." "That's not appropriate either." "Then you sleep on the sofa." Ling Li quickly changed her mind. "I think your previous suggestion was very appropriate. You sleep on the sofa and I'll sleep on the bed. Keep your voice down. Come in." When they entered the courtyard, Ling Zhan lowered his voice. He grabbed Ling Li's hand and walked across the courtyard. He then pushed her into his room. "Hey, brother, where are you going?" Seeing that Ling Zhan did not come in, Ling Li was confused. She was about to poke her head out when she was rejected. "Shut up, go wash up and sleep." Ling Zhan impatiently closed the door and blocked out Ling Li's voice. He did not care about Ling Li's screams in the room. After closing the door, he stood at the door and shook off the snow on the brim of his hat. He rubbed his hands and stared at the opposite door in a daze. Ling Li's sudden appearance on the red carpet tonight had first caused a direct psychological impact on him, and then Ling Han's appearance completely ruined his original plan. Tonight, it could be said that it was a complete failure from beginning to end. But he still wanted to try again. Chapter 503. There was a burst of laughter coming from the opposite room. "Really? Xiao Yu is awake. Why did you wake her up? Let her have a good rest. I'll visit her tomorrow morning. Give her the phone. I want to talk to her." Wang Yi's voice was bright and clear. "Mom, that's enough. You want her to rest and now you want her to answer the phone. What are you trying to do?" "Aunt Gu is happy too." Fu Yingxiang's voice interrupted. "Why don't you guys talk for a while? I'll go out and make you some supper or something. With such good news, I'm afraid none of us will be able to sleep tonight. Why don't we talk?" "Sure." Wen Yi readily agreed. Before she could finish speaking, Yi Huanyan said unhappily, "Supper? Mom, I was scared to death today. I want to sleep. You should hurry back. Dad doesn't know about this yet. You can't keep the good news to yourself, right? Also, Sister Xiang is a guest. How can you let a guest make supper?" Fu Yingxiang laughed out loud. Fine. I'll go make supper. If you don't want to eat, I want to eat too. Let's chat. We can ask Uncle to come over too." When Fu Yingxiang opened the door and left, Ling Zhan had been standing in the yard for a long time. Her hands and feet were cold from the cold wind. Lanjiang City was exceptionally cold this year. After a heavy snowfall, it was even colder. A gust of cold wind blew into Fu Yingxiang's neck as she stepped out of the door. It was so cold that she shivered. Out of the corner of her eye, she involuntarily saw a figure standing in the corridor. The moonlight was bright, and the figure's shadow was very clear on the snow. She was stunned for a moment before she looked up. "Why are you standing here?" "I just came back." Ling Zhan came back to her senses. She moved her body and felt that her hands and feet were cold. "Oh." Fu Yingxiang responded. At this moment, she suddenly felt that Ling Zhan was a completely different person from the elegant man who had given her a lollipop in the car. At this moment, his eyebrows were full of the childishness of a teenager, and there seemed to be a bit of unwillingness. He was not as calm as before. However, it was this childishness that made her curious. After staring at him for a while, she asked, "I'm going to the kitchen to make some supper. I'll send one to you later. Ling Zhan was about to refuse when she heard a creak behind her. A head popped out of the door and said, 2 servings. I want to eat too. Fu Yingxiong was startled. This girl's voice was exceptionally light, and she was caught off guard by her sudden appearance. She looked at the source of the voice behind Ling Han in astonishment. 1 is enough. Sorry to trouble you, Sister Xiaoying. Ling Zhan looked back at the girl. He seemed to be a little impatient, but there was also a little doting. Fu Yingxiong could not help but guess their relationship. She nodded and went to the kitchen with mixed feelings. Brother, do you have a sister complex? Ling Zhan did not say anything. He pressed Ling Li's head and pushed her back into the room. After closing the door, he heard his sister say this. Who was that just now? She's quite pretty. She's quite similar to Yi Huanyan's style. Are you done? Ling Zhan glanced at her. Pack up your things and go back to America tomorrow. Why are you in such a hurry? Ling Li threw herself on the sofa and said rudely, I think you and Yi Huanyan are out of the picture. Their children are already so big. I thought my brother was heartless and married another beauty. Now it seems that they are destined to be together. Why are you getting involved? Ling Zhan pursed her lips and looked a little unhappy. She changed the topic and said, It's none of your business. Just mind your own business. Have you finished your graduation design? Speaking of graduation design, Ling Li suddenly shrank and said angrily, I've been rejected so many times, but Elsa is still not satisfied. I really don't know what kind of design she wants. I seriously suspect that she's going against me. Elsa is a world-famous jewelry designer. Why would she go against a little kid like you? You probably didn't put in the effort and just handed in the design. Don't I know you? Stop. Ling Li looked upset and suddenly raised her hand. Don't talk to me about these useless things. You can't help me with my graduation design, so don't nag me. Just like how I can't help you with your love life. I won't nag you. While they were talking, there was a knock on the door. Knock, knock, knock. Coming. Ling Zhan turned to open the door. As soon as the door opened, Ling Li took a deep breath and jumped up, exclaiming, It's the 1,000-mile fragrance of chaos. Fu Yingxiong smiled and nodded. She put it on the coffee table and looked at Ling Zhan. I made 2 bowls. I heard from Yen Yen that you left early from the dinner party. You probably didn't eat much. Try it. It's not filling. Ling Zhan was a little embarrassed. Sorry to trouble you, Xiaoying. It's okay. While they were talking, Ling Li had already unceremoniously picked up the bowl and stuffed 2 mouthfuls of wonton into his mouth. He exhaled in satisfaction and said, Wow, this is so delicious. Did you make it? Yes. If you like it, there's more in the kitchen. I knew it. Aunt Zhong never makes chaos. She always makes dumplings with fillings. Haha. I like chaos. Ling Li looked at Fu Yingxiong with a smile and said meaningfully, You'll have a lot of good food with my brother in the future. Ling Zhan turned to look at her. Don't talk nonsense. When she turned back, Fu Yingxiong didn't seem to take it to heart. She looked calm and turned to leave. I still have to help Aunt Zhong send the rest to Aunt Gu and Little Wu. I'm leaving. Ling Zhan nodded and walked her to the door. He opened the door and watched her leave before closing the door. Ling Li's voice came from behind. Brother, she's already gone. You're still in a daze. Are you going to follow her? As soon as he finished speaking, Ling Zhan rolled his eyes again. If there was anyone in the world who could make Ling Zhan, who was always as gentle and elegant as his uncle, lose his temper, it would be this troublesome sister of his. If you want to stay here, you'd better watch your mouth. Otherwise, I'll send you back to America first thing in the morning. What else do you know how to do other than scare me with this? Ling Li rolled his eyes and looked at him with disdain. Let me tell you, it's easy to send me back to America, but it's hard to face your own heart. It's been so many years, but you still haven't given up. Are you doing this for Yi Huanyan or to compete with brother Ling Han? I'm not doing anything for. See, you're not doing anything for anything. Lingley looked like he had seen through him. You're like this. You usually look very rational, but when it comes to critical moments, you don't know what you're doing. Maybe you inherited this from Mom. You don't use your brain when doing things, and you insist that you're doing things for your heart. Brother, are you doing things for your heart? You're clearly leaving because of your obsession. For more than 6 years, not only had Ling Han not seen Yi Huanyan, but Ling Zhan had also not seen her. Can you really guarantee that the person you like is the real Yi Huanyan? Or rather, have you really seen the most genuine side of her? Chapter 504. In the past few years, Ling Li had indeed matured a lot. Ling Zhan could no longer evade the questions he asked. They were brother and sister, blood-related brother and sister. The telepathy between family members was innate. After a long time together, they understood each other and penetrated each other, so even a look could not be hidden from them. You came back to China just to let yourself give up. After saying this, Ling Li lowered his head, held the bowl of soup and drank a big mouthful. Then he wiped his mouth with his hand, got up, and threw himself on the bed like a fried dough twist. He wrapped himself in the quilt and said, "I'm going to sleep, brother." After a long while, there was an indifferent sound in the air. Okay. The next morning, Wan Yi ran to the hospital to visit Ji Xiaoye with a lot of bags. Yi Huanyan followed her and helped her carry her things into the trunk. She offered to drive her to the hospital. You have an ulterior motive, Yen Yen. Wan Yi was a smart person. She could tell at a glance that her best friend was desperately trying to find a way out of this embarrassing situation. Before she came back last night, she had probably vented her anger on Ling Han quite a bit. Now, she didn't know how to explain herself. You're still talking about it? Yi Huanyan said angrily, Isn't this all your fault? Aren't you going to clean up this mess for me? Don't. Wan Yi raised her hand to block the trunk door. She had a playful look on her face. I don't want to clean up this mess. How about this? I'll take a taxi myself, or Uncle Zhang can send me there. I don't want to trouble a strong woman like you. Isn't your movie about to be released? Aren't you going to work at the company? Yi Huanyan quickly forced a smile. I'm just kidding. Why would I want you to clean up this mess for me? Isn't it a joke? I'm sending you to the hospital. I don't mean anything else. I'm going to see my best friend and my future nephew, right? Ever since Yi Huanyan brought Ling Han to the Four Seasons Villa, Wan Yi understood her daughter better. She was not a considerate person at all. Because of Ling Han, the two often bickered. Over time, they got used to this way of getting along with each other. It was much more relaxed than before. The dust of the movie was basically settled. There was only a bunch of step-by-step processes left. It was not urgent, and Gu Qi was in the company to keep an eye on it. Yi Huanyan was now worried about the acquisition plan that was mentioned by Ling Han at the charity banquet. She had not yet told Ling Han about the old lady's inheritance. As for Ling Han's own plans, the two of them had not had time to talk about them in depth. The most urgent thing was that Venture Media had already boasted that they were going to acquire Pleasure Group. She knew that she could not throw a tantrum now, so she shamelessly followed Wan Yi to the hospital. She wanted Wan Yi to explain clearly about the acupuncture. Then, the two of them could bury the hatchet and discuss the big plan together. Wan Yi teased Yi Huanyan, but she did not really intend to make things difficult for her. After all, she was her daughter. If she did not care about her daughter, who would? In the hospital, Gu Xinian blamed himself because of the surgery. He did not sleep the whole night and stayed in the ward with Ji Xiaoye the whole night. Ling Han also stayed by the side. He did not sleep because of the awkward situation with Yi Huanyan. The two of them chatted for a while. In the blink of an eye, it was dawn. When Wan Yi came to visit with a few thermal containers, the two of them looked exhausted. Especially Ling Han. It was obvious that the effects of the medicine had worn off. When he saw her, he could barely open his eyes. Xiao Yu is still not awake? Wan Yi stood at the door of the ward. When she saw Ji Xiaoye lying motionless on the bed, she quickly lowered her voice and slowed down her movement of opening the door. She waved the big and small bags in her hands and said to Gu Xinian, "Eat breakfast first." Ling Han was sitting in his wheelchair and looked drowsy. When he heard this, he subconsciously felt that he would definitely not have breakfast, so he looked up and glanced at Gu Xinian. "Go ahead. If Xiaoyu wakes up, I'll call you." Wan Yi originally wanted to ask Ling Han to come out and eat with her, but from the corner of her eye, she glanced at her daughter who was standing outside the door and did not want to come in. She changed her words. "That's good. An Yen, come and eat." Gu Xinian reluctantly followed his mother out of the ward. He frowned and said, "Mom, I'm not hungry." "You're not hungry, but other people are." Wan Yi glanced at Yi Huanyan. "I didn't ask him not to eat breakfast. He didn't want to come out." Yi Huanyan was stunned for 2 seconds. Then she opened the door and walked in with the breakfast bags. Ling Han was stunned when he saw her come in. He looked up at her with an apologetic expression. "Eat breakfast." Yi Huanyan handed him the plastic bag with the buns in it. Her attitude was a little forceful. Ling Han took it and took 2 bites. It was dry and seemed to be difficult to swallow. She inserted the straw into the soy milk box and handed it over. Yi Huanyan lowered her voice. "Drink some soy milk." "Thank you." Ling Han nodded. He took a sip and swallowed the hard-to-swallow bun. During breakfast, Yi Huanyan did not mention what happened last night. Ling Han did not dare to mention it. There was a look of anxiety in his eyes. After he finished eating the bun and drinking the soy milk, he looked up at her. Yen, I'm really sorry about what happened last night. If I had known that you would be so angry, I wouldn't have. Xiaoyu should be waking up soon. Don't disturb her here. I'll push you out for a walk." Ling Han was slightly stunned. While he was in a daze, Yi Huanyan had already pushed him out of the ward. At the door of the ward, Wan Yi and Gu Xinian looked at him calmly and he floated past. The 2 of them did not even ask him a question. It was still early in the hospital garden. There was an old man doing morning exercises in the garden. He was wearing a blue and white striped hospital gown and practicing Tai Chi. Yi Huanyan and Ling Han were not far from the old man. Because there were not many people, their voices could be heard very clearly in the garden. Yen, if you're still angry, I understand. I can accept how long you want to be angry with me. But you have to take care of yourself. You're wearing too little today. I'm not angry. Yi Huanyan looked at him with a smile. I have good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? Ling Han frowned. The bad news. The bad news is that I just found out that Umbo has been released from prison. He's already talking to CEO Hong of Venture Media about the acquisition. The offer isn't high. It seems that he's in a hurry to make a move. What's the good news? The good news is that because the offer isn't high, we can make a move at this time and take back the company that originally belonged to you. Ling Han went silent and seemed to be lost in thought. After a while, he sighed faintly. This isn't considered good news. I don't have that much money to talk about the acquisition now. Yi Huanyan disagreed. There's good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? Chapter 505. Good news. Ling Han looked up at her. The good news is that I've opened Grandma's inheritance. Although I'm not sure how much Venture Media offered for the acquisition of Pleasure Group, I can guarantee that Grandma's inheritance will definitely exceed their offer. After Yi Huanyan said this, she was met with a long silence. Ling Han frowned and didn't look happy at all. That's for you and Naneo. I can't touch it. It wasn't that he didn't know what the old lady left for Yi Huanyan. Although he hadn't carefully studied the Ling family's assets, the old lady lived a conservative life and would definitely keep more than half of the assets in her hands. It wouldn't be surprising even if the amount far exceeded the entire Pleasure Group. But he never had the intention to touch those assets. From the beginning, he was sure that the inheritance belonged to Yi Huanyan and Naneo. Yi Huanyan had expected him to say something like that. She took a deep breath and persuaded him, "Did you forget what you said to me at the charity banquet?" Ling Han's gaze froze. He clenched his fingers so tightly that his knuckles turned slightly white. At the charity banquet, the reason why he told Yi Huanyan to help him was because he found out some truths that he had never thought of before. Li Ao's words echoed in his mind the entire night and he couldn't let it go. All these years, his resentment towards his biological father, his hatred towards Jiang Mailan, the anger that he had vented his anger on Yi Huanyan, and even the wrongful explanation of his biological mother's death made him unable to rest in peace. The past 10 years seemed like a dream. In the blink of an eye, he returned to the starting point. He returned to the time when he had just returned to the country and when Wen Qingwan was still alive. Those depressing and unbearable times. After so many years, after washing away the hatred that had blinded his eyes, he finally remembered that Wen Qingwan was already in a state of severe depression back then. She was very paranoid, and her attitude towards Ling Dongming became colder and colder. Even the divorce was brought up by her. In terms of the division of assets, other than her request to give her brother a portion of the shares, the rest was all for him. She was hysterical and even wanted Ling Dongming to transfer all the assets under his name to her when they were talking about the divorce. And all of her hysterics received the mildest response. On the divorce agreement, Ling Dongming signed it without any objections. All of the assets and shares under his name were transferred to Ling Han. Actually, Ling Han didn't understand Wen Qingwan's actions back then. He had felt his parents' feelings for each other on the surface since he was young. The family atmosphere was cold. His mother, who was otherworldly, only knew how to read her books every day. Occasionally, she would go to the university to give lectures on modern history. To be honest, Wen Qingwan didn't put in much effort for this family. Perhaps it was because she was arrogant, or perhaps it was because she was used to being high and mighty, or perhaps it was because she didn't have any close feelings for Ling Dongming. After so many years, Ling Han finally recognized the reality of the problem in a family back then. Even without Jiang Mailan, his parents would still have gotten a divorce. At that time, what saved his parents' marriage? Perhaps it was just as Li Ao said, the tumor in Wen Qingwan's body that was already incurable. Ling Dongming's objection to the divorce came from his responsibility as a man. Wen Qingwan could have spent her last days peacefully. Her husband was gentle and elegant, and her son was modest and filial. However, the car accident that ruined everything didn't just come from an affair. It was premeditated. Okay, just take it that I'm borrowing it from you and your son. When pleasure comes back, all the shares will be under your name. Ling Han nodded. Yi Huanyan knew that it wasn't easy to struggle like this. He was such a noble person, and no one knew him better than she did. It was rare for him to lower his head. What exactly happened on the day of the charity banquet? What did Li Ao talk to him about? Yi Huanyan suddenly had some doubts. What's the bad news? Ling Han's question pulled her back to reality. The bad news is that since Umbo and his son betrayed you previously, they definitely won't dare to sell the company to you now. Even if venture media offers a lower price, I'm afraid it will still be their first choice. Gu Xinian was the one who told her this. She hadn't worked in the workplace for a long time and didn't know anything about the key issues of mergers and acquisitions. She had consulted Gu Xinian beforehand, and Gu Xinian had always been very concerned about this matter, so when she asked, he directly analyzed the pros and cons. According to the current situation of Umbo and his son, they definitely wouldn't be willing to let Ling Han have a chance to make a comeback. They were guilty and afraid that Ling Han would take revenge on them. However, the negotiations seem to be hindered now. I heard that they are now in a deadlock because of the acquisition contract. Ling Han rubbed his chin with a serious expression. Venture Media is in a deadlock with Umbo because Umbo and his son insist on keeping a portion of the shares in their hands and are unwilling to withdraw, right? Yi Huanyan nodded. That's right. Hong Rizhang is a person who will cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. He won't dare to use someone like Umbo, who is always ready to usurp the throne. However, Umbo isn't stupid either. Without pleasure, they can't just sit around and do nothing in the future, right? So, they have their eyes on the big pie after pleasure and venture media merge. They want a share of the pie. Once Venture Media and Pleasure Group merged, the corresponding assets would also be merged. After the company's restructuring, the change in equity involved the foundation of Venture Media. In other words, if Umbo and his son held on to Pleasure's shares and refused to let go, in the end, they would hold on to the new Venture Media after the merger and refuse to let go. Hong Rizhong was such a shrewd person. In the hands of this father and son duo, even Ling Han had suffered a loss. How could he take the risk of leading the wolf into the house? This news isn't too bad. Ling Han suddenly smiled. And your first news is indeed good news. Yi Huanyan looked a little confused. What do you mean? There's still room for appreciation if you keep the real estate. The fixed assets that Grandma left for you and Naneo will probably only depreciate. It's better to invest them. Ling Han's eyes flashed. Umbo and his son definitely won't let go if I show up, but Venture Media will definitely lower the price when I show up to buy them. I'd like to see how much they can lower the price. While they were chatting, the person on the bed mumbled. Yi Huanyan was stunned, and the conversation came to an abrupt end. Ji Xiaoye opened her eyes slowly and said in confusion, "Where am I?" "Hey, don't move." Seeing that she was about to get up, Yi Huanyan hurriedly shouted, "You just finished the surgery. Don't move." It was too late. Ji Xiaoye's movement had already pulled on her wound. She immediately screamed, "Oh my!" Before she could finish speaking, the door to the ward was knocked open and Gu Xinian rushed in anxiously. "What's wrong?" Chapter 506. When Gu Xinian rushed in, Ji Xiaoye was screaming miserably. She probably pulled the wound. Yi Huanyan explained with a pale face, "I'll call the doctor." When she went out of the door, she bumped into Wan Yi. The mother and daughter screamed and separated from each other while covering their foreheads. For a time, there were continuous screams in the ward, and the situation happened frequently. Gu Xinian was very anxious, but he didn't dare to move casually. He only stretched out his head and asked, "Xiao Yu, where do you hurt? How are you feeling?" "My neck hurts," Ji Xiaoye wailed, "stiff neck. What the hell is this pillow?" Hearing this, everyone was speechless. Wani covered her forehead and walked to the bedside. "Darling, I'll change a new pillow for you in the afternoon. Just bear with it. How about your body? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" "My body..." Ji Xiaoye was slightly stunned. The great pain caused by the stiff neck made her have no time to care about other abnormalities on her body for a while. Now being asked by Wen Yi, she moved her waist subconsciously. "Ouch." A scream overflowed from her mouth, followed by the sound of gasping. It was really painful. Compared to the screams just now, the silent parts were the real pain. "Don't move, darling." Wen Yi said darling again and again. She pressed Ji Xiaoye's shoulder. "You have just finished the appendicitis operation. Don't move. You have to rest for a while." "Appendicitis?" Ji Xiaoye came to her senses and suddenly remembered that she fell off the stage. "Then my dinner party." "Dinner party is fine." Ling Han, who was sitting in a wheelchair, interrupted. As a workaholic, he knew best what the first reaction was when he woke up. Except for work, it was still work. It was a perfect curtain call. In the end, Su Mang went to take photos with the stars. Ji Xiaoye finally felt relieved. She let out a long sigh and lay down on the pillow. Wan Yi sat by the bed and inquired about his well-being. Gu Xinian stood at the foot of the bed, not knowing what to do. Ling Han had a thought-provoking smile on his face. Yi Huanyan had just hurriedly called the doctor. The whole family was almost here. Even if it was an appendicitis surgery, there was no need to mobilize so many people, right? Ji Xiaoye gave Gu Xinian a look. Seeing that he was in a daze and did not respond for a long time, she could only cough twice and say hesitantly, "Mom, could it be that I don't have appendicitis, but some kind of cancer?" "What nonsense are you spouting?" "Ba ba ba." Wan Yi grabbed her hand and carefully touched the bedside table. She even murmured, just touch the wood, nothing is forbidden. No, I am confused. Ji Xiaoye looked confused. Mom, what's wrong? Wan Yi's joy was beyond words. She held Ji Xiaoye's wrist with trembling slightly. Xiaoyu, you are going to be a mother. Ji Xiaoye was slightly stunned. Mother? Gu Xinian stood at the foot of the bed. When he heard Wan Yi's words, he seemed to finally come to his senses. He stared at Ji Xiaoye's eyes and opened his mouth. Xiaoyu. This was the second time he was about to have a child. He had not participated in the birth of his first child. Ever since Su Ku was pregnant, he had been in a state of being kept in the dark. He did not have many good memories with that child, and he could only watch as the child died before his eyes. In fact, he was afraid. He was afraid that such a small life was too fragile. If he didn't take good care of it, it would lead to a big mistake that couldn't be undone. Therefore, no matter how much his mother urged him to have a child with Ji Xiaoye, he didn't ask for anything in his heart. Ji Xiaoye saw his worry in his eyes. Her originally happy mood was completely disrupted by his worried look. She couldn't help but frown. Does your neck still hurt? Wan Yi asked. She quickly shook her head, but she pulled the nerves in her neck and cried out in pain. Hey, this pillow won't do. Wan Yi turned to look at Gu Xinian and urged, Nian, go buy a new one now. It has to be the kind that can treat cervical vertebrae. Gu Xinian was stunned. Oh, okay, I'll get Gu Qi to buy it. Does Gu Qi have time to pay attention to you? Yen is crazy busy at the company. Recently, you have to go and buy some cassia seeds at the Chinese medicine store. Everyone could tell that Gu Xinian was a little distracted at this moment. However, Wan Yi was focused on her daughter-in-law and didn't pay attention to him. Ling Han held the axle of his wheelchair and walked around Wan Yi without a trace. He walked past Gu Xinian and said, I know where to buy it. I'll go with you. Gu Xinian finally came back to his senses and nodded hurriedly and followed him out of the ward. From the beginning to the end, except for that Xiaoyu that he didn't know the meaning of, he didn't speak to Ji Xiaoye again. The worry on his face was more than joy. After he left, Ji Xiaoye stared at the spot where he was standing just now for a long time. She was a little lost. She didn't have a child ever since she got married, not because she was unlucky, but because she had always taken precautions. Gu Xinian didn't want a child. If she still didn't understand this, she would have lived in vain for so many years. It wasn't because she had a temper that she threw tantrums every 2 to 3 days. On one hand, her mother-in-law urged her to have a child, and on the other hand, her husband pretended to comply but didn't want a child. No matter what decision she made in her heart, she decided to be in a bad position. If she wanted to get to the bottom of it, Ji Xiaoye could even predict when this child was born. It was purely an accident. With this child, Yan's knot in her heart is really untied. Wan Yi's voice echoed in her ears. Ji Xiaoye was slightly stunned. Not in my heart? Was she referring to Su Ku's child? Wan Yi's slender fingers brushed the loose strands of hair scattered by the pillow. Her expression was gentle, and she was no longer ecstatic. She was almost like a different person from a minute ago. Previously, I kept urging you to have a child. Do you think I'm so anxious to have a grandson? Even if I'm anxious, I have Naneo by my side. The reason why I'm urging you so much is that I don't want any more misunderstandings between you two because of the past. That child has always been a knot in Yan's heart. It's not that he doesn't want a child, but he's afraid. I know my own son best. Ji Xiaoye's expression froze. You're saying that Xin Yan has always not wanted a child because he's afraid? What is he afraid of? He's afraid of losing something. Sometimes, the feeling of not having something or a person is much better than the feeling of losing something after having it. You know how it feels to have your hopes dashed, right? The siblings are both stubborn. After they've set their sights on something or a person, it's too difficult to let go. Su Ku's death was a blow to Gu Xinian. At least he had a child to make up for it. However, that child died young, and it was the last straw that broke the camel's back. The guilt and uneasiness that had long subsided came back again, and it made Gu Xinian suffocate. No one could persuade him, and no one dared to persuade him. At that time, your father and I didn't dare to persuade him. The family doctor was on standby 24 hours a day, afraid that he wouldn't be able to take it and would collapse one day. If it weren't for Xiaoying, the two of us really wouldn't know what to do. Chapter 507. He felt guilty towards Xiaoying. It was only in front of Xiaoying that he didn't act rashly. In any case, she saved him. Since then, you also know that he hasn't been interested in any other woman. Wan Yi sighed. Actually, old Gu and I didn't have any hopes of him getting married or having children. At that time, when he said that he wanted to come back to China to relax and find his sister, we only took it as an excuse to escape from the villa. Meeting you was really an accident in life. Meeting Xin Yan was also an accident in my life. Ji Xiaoye frowned. However, this accident was too shocking for her. Her entire youth was in turmoil. Xiaoyu, our family feels that his life is actually dark and gloomy. It's not because no one can illuminate him, but because he would rather be buried under a pile of ruins. But you made him walk out of it, so I hope that the two of you can truly permeate each other's lives and live a good life. Ji Xiaoye pursed her lips. She knew that it was a very sad thing to fall in love with a man with a story. You couldn't make him forget the past, and you couldn't even ask him to let go of the past because it was a part of him. It constantly reminded you of its existence and couldn't be erased. She thought about this before she got married and accepted it. But it wasn't until after she got married that she understood that when the other person's memories were a minefield that you couldn't penetrate and talk to, friction was inevitable. The impact of Su Ku and the child's death on Gu Xinian was so great that it was beyond her imagination. Because of the child's ashes, he almost didn't have any glass bottles with him. The decorations in the house were always mainly milky white. Even the windows were designed with wooden shutters. He never drank from a glass cup and was always drinking from a white porcelain cup. Did he really let go? Neither of them mentioned it and tacitly deceived themselves. Yes, he let go. Is it enough to just have this child? Ji Xiaoye looked at Wan Yi. But I think Xin Yan doesn't want this child. Child. Wan Yi touched her forehead with a loving expression. You're wrong. After the child is born, you'll understand. All his energy will be placed on this child. Your family and everything in the past will be gone. Ji Xiaoye looked at Wan Yi as if she understood. Even if she didn't understand, Wan Yi's words couldn't be wrong. Who could understand her son better than her? However, it seemed to be a tradition of the Gu family to leave things unsaid. Ji Xiaoye tilted her head and coughed dryly, secretly sighing. In the Gu family, from the head of the family, Gu Hang, to Yi Huanyan's little assistant, Gu Qi, all of them had outstanding IQ. Their words were very profound and difficult to understand. The only exception was Gu Min, who was a weapon lover. She was always shouting about fighting and killing. In a private room of a private club in Lonjiang City, a middle-aged man in his 40s played with a purple clay teapot in his hand. There was a hint of impatience between his brows. What time is it? The assistant beside him glanced at his wrist. CEO Hong, it's 11:00. Hong Rizhong frowned and looked in the direction of the room's entrance. There was no one else other than the waiter standing respectfully. Today, he had an appointment with Umbo to discuss the acquisition of Pleasure Group. This was already the third time. The first two times, Umbo was very enthusiastic. This time, he was actually half an hour late. CEO Hong, will Mr. Wan not come? Impossible. Hong Rizhong sneered. Unless he wants to wait for Pleasure Group to declare bankruptcy and be burdened with debt. How's the news from Macau? Hearing that, the assistant breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. That's true. Our son is disappointing. He lost 20 million in one night. Right now, other than you, who else can take out such a large sum of money to acquire Pleasure Group in such a short time? As he spoke, the door of the room opened and the waiter's voice sounded. "Sir, please come in." A white-haired man walked in with the smell of alcohol. Although he was dressed in a suit, it still could not hide the decadence on his body. The dark circles under his eyes were especially serious. One look and one could tell that he was sleep-deprived. "CEO Wan is here." The assistant stood up and greeted him. He did not show any displeasure at his lateness. "Sorry to have kept you waiting." Wenbo glanced at Hong Rizhong. Although his words were apologetic, he didn't look apologetic at all. Instead, he sat down across from Hong Rizhong and asked the waiter for a cup of tea. "It's okay. I just arrived too." Hong Rizhong took a sip of tea and put down the cup. "I don't have much time today. Let's get straight to the point. You should have seen the previous conditions. I'm willing to raise the price, but don't mention the shares again. You see. Can't I tell the difference between a fishing rod and a fish?" Umbo sneered. "Do you think I'm short of money? What I want is future prospects. You're not the only one who wants to acquire Pleasure Group. But other companies may not have the ability to bring him back from the dead." "Forget it." Umbo suddenly stood up. "Since you don't have much time today, there's no need to talk about it. Let's talk about it another day. I have something to do, so I'll leave first." His cold attitude was something that she had never seen before in the 2 previous meetings she had with him. Hong Rizhong's face froze and showed a somewhat stunned expression, but it was quickly drowned by his deep eyes. "Are you very busy today? I have an appointment to talk about something." Wenbo stood up and brushed the dust off his suit. Compared to the 2 wrinkled suits he wore during the discussion, today's outfit seemed to have been purposely cleaned up. Hong Rizhong became alert and asked tentatively, "Talk about something? What about it?" Umbo glanced at him, his words and actions full of pride. "Only you, CEO Hong, are allowed to talk about things, but I can't? Although I'm in dire straits now, Pleasure Group is such a big company. A starving camel is still bigger than a horse. There are many people who want to talk about business with me." As he spoke, he had already walked to the door of the private room. "I won't say much, I have to go. Let's talk about the acquisition another day." The assistant sent him to the door. When he turned back, he had a panicked look on his face. "So Hong, look at his attitude." Hong Rizhong's face darkened. "Follow him and see who he's meeting this afternoon. Think of a way to find out who has contacted him recently." "Yes." In a secluded and elegant small cafe, Su Nianhua was wearing a blue suit, a pair of Gucci sunglasses between his slender fingers. He lowered the brim of his hat and held a cup of coffee in his other hand, looking very elegant and calm. The smell of alcohol opposite him hit him in the face, but his expression did not change. "I'm just doing this on behalf of someone else. You also know that the domestic media industry has a bright future. That's why my uncle wants to develop in the domestic market. However, it's not that easy to start one's own business. That's why he wanted to acquire it." Umbo raised his eyebrows. "That's natural. Pleasure Group is just temporarily avoiding the limelight. The previous rumors weren't very good. His internal operating mechanism and those big clients are all. You don't have to explain these to me." Su Nianhua looked at him with a half smile. Chapter 508. Of course. Umbo's expression changed slightly. He lowered his head and coughed dryly. "After all, it's Pleasure's own people. I won't say more. It's just that." Su Nianhua glanced at Umbo and said faintly, "Mr. Wan, if you have something to say, just say it." Umbo laughed dryly and looked thought-provoking. "Mr. Su, you have a good relationship with my nephew. It's inevitable that people will think too much when you mention the acquisition of Pleasure at this time. Don't tell me you want to help them in their hour of need at this time?" Hearing this, the corners of Su Nianhua's mouth curled up, and an indifferent expression appeared on his face. "If you want to provide timely help, you have to assess your own abilities. CEO Wen, you really overestimate me. If it weren't for my uncle's interest in the domestic media industry, I wouldn't have been able to interfere in the acquisition of Huan Yu. I'm just a small-time actress. Umbo held the cup and drank tea, hiding the suspicion on his face. As for the acquisition of pleasure, he naturally hoped that more people would come to compete for it, so that he could get more benefits from it. Previously, only venture media had extended an olive branch to him, so he didn't have much say in the price. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been in a deadlock for so long because of the equity issue. When Su Nianhua contacted him, he was worried about venture media insisting that he withdraw from Pleasure's contract. However, he still had to be cautious about whether he was really acting as a lobbyist for his uncle or if he had other motives. That's not what I meant. I just asked casually. Wanbo smiled and put down his cup. Isn't it because I feel that if my nephew finds out that you're meddling in this matter, I'm afraid he'll lose face? Ling Han and I are just subordinates. I'm afraid Mr. Wen thinks too much of the relationship between the two of us. As he spoke, Su Nianhua lowered his head and glanced at his wrist. I still have work to do today. The specific contract is here. Take a look first. If there's anything you're not satisfied with, just call me. I'll tell my uncle. Umbo quickly stood up. Oh, okay. Seeing Su Nianhua hurriedly walk out of the coffee shop, Umbo's suspicion lessened a bit. From the beginning to the end, Su Nianhua did not show the slightest bit of anxiety, as if he really did have the attitude of helping someone. After leaving the cafe, Su Nianhua dialed a number. The call was picked up almost instantly. Yi Huanyan's voice came through. How was it? Did he believe you? About 70%. Su Nianhua lowered his voice. Even if he really believes you, when it's time to sign the contract, my uncle will sign it. I'm afraid it'll be easily exposed. That won't happen. Umbo doesn't know who your so-called uncle is. Not all of the subsidiaries of the Gu Corporation do business under the name of the Gu Corporation. Gu Lu will take care of these matters. I just need to trouble you to help me mediate with Umbo during this time. You don't have to be so polite with me. Okay. Umbo will probably think of a way to keep an eye on you, so before this matter is over, let's avoid suspicion and not see each other again. We'll find time to have dinner together later. Okay, Su Nianhua responded. I do have work to do tonight. After this matter is over, I want to take some time off. When the time comes, I'll ask Ling Han if he wants to bring Naneo out to play with us. If things go well, I'm afraid he'll be very busy. The two of them chatted on the phone for a while. They didn't dare to say much and hurriedly hung up the phone. The situation was set up by Ling Han. It was a trap to let the enemy fall into it. Or, it was a matter of whether they could cross the sea under the guise of deceit. After hanging up the phone, Yi Huanyan turned to look at Ling Han. Isn't it inappropriate to ask Lu Shen to do this? Umbo will definitely suspect the relationship between the two of you and send someone to investigate thoroughly. We may not be able to cover up this lie. The man in front of the floor-to-ceiling window was tall. After Wan Yi's acupuncture took effect, the time he spent on his feet increased rapidly every day. Now, other than needing more rest at night, he was almost no different from an ordinary person. He looked out of the window with a serious expression. Do you know what it means to create a diversion? Yen. First, he used Su Nianhua, who seemed to have a good relationship with him, to arouse Umbo's suspicion. He was bound to spend all his efforts on investigating the purpose of Su Nianhua's acquisition this time. When he exhausted his energy, no matter what he found, he would take advantage of the situation. What's the next step? Yi Huanyan leaned on the back of the sofa and looked at the figure in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. The next step is for me to talk to him. At this time, Hong Rizhang should have already found out about Su Nianhua's interference. I'm afraid he can't hold it in anymore and is preparing to meet with Umbo to discuss the pros and cons. Ling Han stood in front of the window and looked down at the entire central business district of Lanjiang City motionlessly. The view from the apartment on the top floor of Haiyan Media was very good. From here, he could see the top floor of the pleasure group in the distance, which was where he used to work. Ever since Ji Xiaoye was pregnant, the whole family had been hanging around her. Yi Huanyan wanted to help, but couldn't. Coincidentally, the pre-screening of Remaining Life was imminent, so she didn't care about the hospital anymore and focused on her work. Thinking about it, it seemed that she hadn't been back to the old mansion for a few days. She kept in contact with Ling Han by phone, so when Ling Han appeared here today, she was really surprised. Nothing was tidied up on the coffee table in the apartment, except for all kinds of movie materials. Afraid of losing them, even the cleaner who came every day didn't dare to touch them casually. "It's 7 o'clock. Do you want to stay for dinner?" Without waiting for his answer, Yi Huanyan glanced at her wrist. "I've been eating takeout recently. There's nothing good to eat. It's better than drinking chicken soup every day." Ling Han turned around. After Xiaowu left, Sister Four and Ling Zhan had been eating out every day. Because Ji Xiaoye was pregnant, the old mansion was also in chaos every day. Aunt Zhang was busy cooking for Ji Xiaoye every day and made all kinds of nourishing soups. Even Chen Yin, who was never a picky eater, couldn't take it anymore. She packed up her things and took Naneo on a trip to lie low for a while. Okay, Sister Four and Ling Zhan don't have it easy either. They're here as guests, but they eat out every day. Yi Huanyan shook her head helplessly. "When I'm done with my work, I'll cook for them myself. They sound so pitiful." While speaking, Yi Huanyan made a call. Gu Qi asked the secretary to add an extra portion of takeout later. The call was on speakerphone, so the internal line was directly connected to the assistant's office. Gu Qi's voice sounded a little muffled on the other end of the line, so he just responded with a lukewarm, "Okay," and hung up. Yi Huanyan originally wanted to ask him to bring up something else, but before she could say anything, she heard the busy tone beep. "You're so busy with work? You don't even have time to answer the phone?" Yi Huanyan mumbled and put down the phone. She turned to look at Ling Han and said, "I wanted him to bring you a bottle of drink to cool you down, but now you can only drink plain water. Do you mind?" You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.